Hello, everybody. This music it gets me every time. I should remember how like dancey it is, but I forget. It is Sunday, July 13th. This is the Sunday show. I'm Promise. This is Matt. I feel like I haven't done this in 100 years, so I also feel lost right now, but I'm really excited to host with Matt and to hang out with all of you guys. It's been a while.
How are you? I know you're staying up late. You are or getting up early, and I didn't sleep well last night. I'm staying in Zen mode. I have busted Zen mode at least 3 times in a minor way, once in a moderate way over the last couple weeks. Other than that, it's been going really well, and it's only happened when callers refuse to answer the question and refuse and cannot make sense. It's like I'm trying to get to a point and I need to understand what callers are saying. That's the whole thing. If you're a theist and you want to call in to defend your belief, today is the day to do it. Today is not the day to defend some abstract notion. Today is not the day, Johannan, to call in to have a chit chat about emergent space-time argument. Do not give a fuck, defend theism or not. That's all I care about. But when I say, hey, does your God manifest in reality in a detectable way? That's a yes or no question that can lead to a discussion of how do you know that's the case? What are you doing to detect it and everything else? Because if your God doesn't manifest in a detectable way, then aren't you claiming that you've detected the undetectable? And how does that work? Either way, if we ask a question, it's because we're trying to understand what it is that you believe, because there are billions of people who believe in gods and supernatural claims, and I'm not convinced how many of them actually believe the same thing. Like if you walk into the First Baptist Church of Harvester, there are a variety of different beliefs there about what the Bible means in certain passages, and there are also almost as many God concepts, if not exactly as many God concepts, as there are people sitting there. Everybody's got just a slight little take. Now, do they generally at that church believe that Jesus is part of the Trinity and was born of a virgin and came down in order to live and teach and die and be resurrected in order to serve as substitutionary atonement for our sins so that we might go to heaven? Yeah, in some version or another, that's their beliefs. That's what their tenets are. I'd love for people to defend that. And I am going to be 98.2% Zen today. And not just because I'm tired. I want to see, I'd love to see if there are people who will actually call in and defend and not just try to, prod or come up with irrelevant topics of, I just think that everybody's wrong about the God concept and that God is really the underlying fabric of reality that lends cohesiveness to the shared mind of blah, but oh my God, I want to puke.
Yeah. Yep. My thing that is really frustrating is when we ask a question and somebody just will not answer it. They'll say something like, well, let me tell you about this thing, when it's a yes or no question. And if your response will hold up to logic or is based in truth, then you shouldn't be afraid to just answer our questions. So you're already kind of showing your lack of cards when you won't answer. You can always say stuff after the answer, but please at least let the beginning of your sentence be an answer to what we just asked. That's one of my big frustrations is I take the time to think of a question. I really want to know the answer, and then I don't get it from the person, and we take 30 minutes to try to get back to that same question that we started with.
I have a thought. If you're ready, I mean, we got some callers lining up. By all means, if you're one of those people, if you have those beliefs, it's time for you to call in and defend what you believe and why, and perhaps most importantly, why you think others should agree with you. If you think you have justification, but we can't and shouldn't, I'm still interested in that, because I like to know why you think you're justified and why you think we can't be. If you've had some private revelation, that's interesting. I would like to try something with a caller right now, because let me by way of explaining, I've done this for 20 years. And because of that, I can tell by some things that the call screeners put in the notes, or that the callers put in the notes. I, unfortunately, build an immediate model in my head of what that person is talking about, probably, and potential issues or questions to ask. So right now, there's a caller. James is on hold right now. I wouldn't mind taking, but reading the description, I now have in my head thoughts, and it's probably a little unfair, but if James is going to call in to discuss this topic, I would like him to confound my thoughts, to make me think this call is not the pointless sophistry that it might initially appear, having been down this road a couple of times. So if you want, let's take James and see if he can convince me.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Cool. So James is calling, pronouns are he, him, from New York. James is agnostic and says, Superman helped give me the tools to understand an idea of God that might be sufficient enough for the host to at least think about. That is a mountain of vague and confusion. So James, help me out here. What is this God concept that you think we can benefit from?
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I just want to say I love both of you. You guys also helped give me these tools. I'm very nervous.
Oh,
I
good.
want to start by letting you guys
I'm
know.
I'm nervous today too, if that makes you feel any better. I haven't done this in a while. So we'll both hang out. We'll get through the first call. It'll be a great show.
Okay. There are two things I want to tell you about myself that I hope will help you be able to engage with me better.
Okay.
In a way,
Can I ask you, James?
Right off the bat, James, I don't know what that has to do with the Superman proposition. All I wanted to know is, what is this Superman proposition? And then we get flattery, and now you want to tell us background story. Is your background story relevant to the Superman thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I would like to amend that. I think that my backstory may inform why I am struggling to say what I'm trying to say. And if you know it, maybe that will help you to understand why I'm having this problem. And then maybe
This isn't a helpline for problems. This is a place to call in to present and defend ideas. I'd recommend recoveringfromreligion.org and seculartherapy.org.
Okay.
But not to undercut it. You could be wrong. It could be critical. Let's just get to us. Tell us whatever you want to tell us about you as reasonably quickly as possible. And then let's get on to this concept that you think we need.
Okay, this will be very fast. I have ADHD-C, okay, and I was traumatized over a very long period of time because my father was a violent, abusive, just I was traumatized. That's it. That is all with that. Now,
what the hell does that have to do with the Superman thing?
I'm trying to tell you, but because I have to keep explaining this, I haven't been able to get there.
So,
You
James,
don't
let's
have
just
to keep
move
explaining it.
forward.
I'm going to stop. Go ahead, promise.
Yeah, we're gonna. I'll just share some insight with you. For Matt and I, because we do this a lot, we just want to know if this is a good argument or a good point you have to make. I'm so sorry for what you experienced growing up, but we can't hear the backstory on everybody. We want to see if your logic holds up. You could be an amazing person, a terrible person. You could have gone through horrible trauma, no trauma. What we care about is the argument at hand. That's why Matt recommended recovering from religion if you need to find a secular therapist or something like that. So let's just go ahead. Your response to what I say next, can it just be what your argument is?
I don't think it matters if God exists in the material universe. In order for the concept of a God to have a practical application to people that we could learn from.
Okay. I am trying not to completely short circuit this by saying that's an obvious statement that we already understand and I don't give a fuck about.
Right. What I'm trying to say is that it's almost as if like God is like an artificial intelligence that we can use to empathize with when we when we don't have something next to us that can give us the answer. But the problem with artificial intelligence, and the current technology, AI is doing this too, is that it can only regurgitate what we feed it. It cannot actually tell us something that is original. And that if you look at God as in religion, the problem with people is that they're putting their beliefs, their customs, their ideas into this idea of a God, and it's regurgitating that stuff back to them in a confusing jumble.
James,
And when other people try to...
So, James, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just for the sake of being respectful of all the callers today, we're going to keep the same consistent rules, which is that, we're wanting to hear people's, whatever it is that they believe and then why they believe that. And I'm struggling. I feel like you're just kind of letting us know some things you've thought over in your head. And I still don't understand, what is it that you actually believe? Is there a God that you believe exists or no?
Okay. I've watched the show, and you've used a pink unicorn to explain something to people.
But James, that was a pretty simple question. Is there a God that you believe exists, or do you not believe any gods exist?
I believe that God exists as an abstract concept. And if it didn't exist as an abstract...
James, no. I don't know why this is so incredibly difficult. Promise is asking if you believe there's an actual extant agent being God. We are aware that there is a God concept. There are almost as many God concepts as there are people. Abstract concepts don't exist. They are emergent properties from, or criteria, structures that are produced by brains and minds. You keep telling us stuff that I, no offense, find obvious and useless. Like, there are concepts. Some of those concepts are about a God. God concepts, just like any other concept, whether it's real, whether it's tied to something real in the world or not, can be used for object lessons and teach. That's the reason we tell stories. That's the reason we make up stories. That's the reason we transfer thoughts about our history, whether they're true or not. What is it? You said Superman helped give you the tools to understand an idea of God that might be sufficient enough for the host to at least thinking about. Are you talking about the new Superman movie that just came out or the Superman concept?
Both.
Okay. I saw the new Superman film on day one. It was not bad, but it was not remotely good, and I don't think it was particularly well written, and I don't know what concept in there is of any value to me.
Okay. I understand that. You had mentioned a moment ago that you don't know why it's hard for me to tell this to you.
No, I don't know why it's hard for you to answer a yes or no question about whether or not you are in fact convinced that a God exists. Instead, that is a yes or no. It should be straightforward.
No.
And instead of yes, it is. Don't say no. It is a yes or no question. You are either convinced that a God being exists or you are not convinced. Those are the only fucking options. And that question is straightforward. But instead, you decide in answer to that to say, I believe that that God exists as a concept. That's not a God existing. Concepts aren't the thing existing. A pink unicorn does not exist because there's a concept of a pink unicorn. You were asked a yes or no question and you diverted to something that is not at all an answer to that. And that's what I didn't understand why it was so difficult.
I would like to clarify that the reason that I mentioned my backstory is that I was trying to tell you why I'm having this problem that I have right now.
But James, we tried to clarify this in the very beginning of the call. This isn't the episode for you to have that conversation with us. And Matt and I are not equipped to have that conversation to help you figure that out. That's why we recommend Recovering from Religion, because the Sunday show is designated to theists calling in, telling us what God they believe in, or gods, why they believe in it, and then we have a discussion, debate about it. So it sounds like you were looking for something else out of this show that unfortunately we can't offer you, but we can refer you to Recovering from Religion.
I will say, I think I can ask a couple of yes or no questions that hopefully should be really easy to answer. Excluding God concepts, there is also the claim that some actual God being exists. Are you convinced that that is true?
No.
Cool. Do you think if you were convinced that it was true, you would be aware that you are convinced that it's true?
No.
You don't think that if you were convinced there was a God, that you would be aware that you're convinced of it? How is it that you can be convinced of something and not be aware that you're convinced of it?
I am not sure how to answer that question.
Okay. I don't believe it's possible to actually be convinced of something and not be aware that you are convinced of something.
Okay, the way you just said that help clarify it for me. Thank you. Of course, if you were convinced of something, you would be aware that.
So if you then agree,
you were right.
You've now agreed that if you were convinced that a God existed, you would be aware of that, right?
Right.
Okay, so when Promise asks you, are you convinced that a God exists? That is a simple yes or no question that you are either aware that you are convinced, and the answer is yes, or you are not aware that you are convinced or not convinced, in which case the answer is no, you're not convinced.
Yeah, I just didn't really understand the question at first. I couldn't follow it at the beginning.
Okay. I think we'll probably move on, James. I think that we'll call that progress.
Can I just mention something, one thing, and then I'm done.
I guess.
So James,
Before I was put on the call, Matt looked at the call screeners, what the call screener wrote down. And Matt decided, based on what was written down, that he had enough information to, and I wrote down what he said, to build a model in his head of what I was going to say. Do you have sufficient evidence to know for a fact, based on what the call screener wrote, that you knew exactly what I was going to say?
No, and I said so. What I said is, I
Exactly.
suspect, and I would like for you to prove me wrong, I suspect that this is going to be a monumental waste of time, and I was correct.
Matt,
yeah, James, I think it's time for us to move on from the call. I think it already was not going anywhere because you were calling for something that we don't offer here, and now you're taking it in a really weird direction. So I'm going to let you go, but thanks for calling, and we're going to move on to another caller. Thanks, James.
I was not.
Sorry, I just decided that one was over.
Yeah, no. You are in
I see
charge
we've
of
got-
all of it. As a matter of fact, you pick the next ones, you direct everything. My thing is, I like James, but James needs somebody to chat with, and that's not the purpose of the show. And James is tossing around ideas of, ooh, is there some way I can, like 1,000 other people who I've spoken to before, is there some way that I can still salvage something about the God concept in order for it to be useful? Meanwhile, as someone who was a former Christian, there are many life lessons in the Bible that I don't think are tied to actual true events, and yet they can teach us something. This is the entire purpose of spreading information and telling stories. So when I read what the call screener wrote, I was like, oh, James is an agnostic, and he's trying to find some way to make anything at all useful out of this God concept, which is exactly what he was doing. I wasn't completely sure. I wasn't absolutely certain, because I'm not absolutely certain about anything. And if James had watched regularly, he'd probably know that. But I was dead right as to what James was trying to do. And that's fine. You're not, I mean, he's not the first, he's not the only, he's not probably not even the last one we'll talk to in the next week or so with ideas like that, trying to find some value in this idea that permeates society. I understand that, but it's like people thinking they've invented a wheel at this point. We have wheels. We already know about concepts. And, I think James just couple more steps down the road, and all of a sudden things will be easier to talk about and more comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And in case James is still listening, I'm sure that's frustrating to have the call cut off at the end, but I would rather us end it on a good note than it delve into something it didn't need to be. And it sounds like you might have a real use of recovering from religion and talking to some people that are trained to have these conversations with you, rather than Matt and I waste your time having that conversation. So that's why I did that.
I am definitely not good at it.
Well, especially if the preamble starts with some trauma from your background, that lets me know that you need a professional to speak with you, and probably some good friends in your life. And I think that's something to look for. So please check out Recovering from Religion.
This is something I've had to point out many times, because people will call in and say, well, let me ask you this, Matt. What's your view on this? Let me tell you right now, my view on there are no subjects on which my view is relevant to why you are convinced of that topic. If you're calling in to defend a God concept, what I believe is completely irrelevant. You have your reasons. We don't yet know what those are. We are here to hear them and consider them and evaluate them and either be convinced by them or to explain to you, hopefully, why we're not. So your backstory is irrelevant to whether or not a God exists. Your backstory is irrelevant to every single syllogism and piece of evidence for the existence of God. Nothing about your life specifically is relevant to that, and neither, and the same is true for my life and Promise's life. Now, I'm fine having conversations and digging in on stuff like this a little bit further. But when I say, oh, is your backstory relevant to what you want to tell us about Superman? And you say, yes, you're wrong. And I knew he was wrong, but it's, people need to say what they need to say. And we went down that road. So we're there.
Yeah. Well, I'm ready for another caller if you are. Are you down to talk to Alex?
Sure.
Cool. Let's bring on Alex. Hey, Alex, you are live on the line with Matt and Promise. What did you want to talk to us about today? You got a God you believe in,
Hey, Promise.
or something you want to start us off with so we know exactly what your stance is?
What's up, Promise? What's up, Matt? I've been a lifelong atheist. You know, it's just like it never stuck to me. But and then I found Matt probably like 2 months ago. Started watching the videos. I found it entertaining. You know, I like when he cusses at people, hangs up on them. You know what I'm saying? I kind of like that. Entertaining.
I think you're watching
You're
for the
very
wrong
sweet,
reasons
Promise.
then.
Say it again.
But also, you say you've been a lifelong atheist and you started watching a couple months ago, and now you're calling in as a theist, right?
That's right. That's right.
Cool.
Because
So
a couple of
what
days ago,
convinced you?
I got shot at. Shot at with
You
an
got
automatic
shot
Glock.
at?
Yeah.
Cool.
Me and a couple other people
I mean,
that had
cool
nothing
that
to
I
do with it.
understood you, not cool that you got shot at. I'm very sorry that you were
Right.
shot at. What does getting shot
I
at
didn't
have
get
to
hit.
do with
No,
whether or not there's a
nobody got
God?
hit. Nobody got hit.
Now,
Well, you
what is
know,
being
when I got
shot
shot
at?
at,
Okay.
right, when I got shot at, something hit me, a wave hit me. It felt like I had been hit by a bullet. I was almost certain of it. And I began to think about what it really means to believe in God, right? And after watching all your videos, I never heard anybody ask this question. I want to pose a question to you.
Okay.
Why do
So
you think?
let me pause. Alex, are you
Yes,
going to
sir.
remember your question if I interrupt you now?
Go ahead.
Okay. This isn't a quiz show where you call in to ask us questions. This is a show where you call
Right.
in to defend your belief. Just hang on. Let me get this out.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna wait and let you ask the question, and we'll do our best to answer it.
Okay.
And hopefully that will
Okay.
encourage you to answer the questions that we have.
Right. I
So
will.
what question do you have for us that you've never heard in the 20 years I've done this?
Right. Now, I ain't watched all your info, but I've never heard this question asked. Why is there so many people that believe in higher power? Like, there's the entire human history. Now, explain that.
People are similar creatures with similar brains trying to solve similar problems. They are similarly lazy and they are similarly prone to rationality. And so when somebody,
But you're
and we're
different.
all, yes, I am different, but if you'd let me finish answering your question before you chime in with some smug shit, that would be great.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So we're all
Okay.
dissatisfied with not knowing the answers. And some people are more prone to accepting answers that aren't sufficient and don't have sufficient justification in order to make them more comfortable with not knowing. I am not one of those people because my discomfort with not knowing the answer cannot be solved by appealing to bullshit, irrationality, unfounded beliefs. The God proposition is not an explanation for anything because you don't explain things in terms of a mystery. You explain things in terms of other things you understand. My brain cannot accept
Okay.
claims that aren't supported by evidence and claims that
Right.
do not actually solve the problem. That doesn't mean I'm better.
Right.
It doesn't, but yes, I am in fact different in the sense that I, unlike every believer I've ever spoken to, managed to figure out that their reasons and justifications were fallacious. I'm hoping that I can help other people begin to realize, because I think we're all pretty much capable of it, that their reasons are
Right.
bad. Now, what does almost getting shot have to do with whether or not there's a God?
You know, when you're in a situation, your brain begins to reach out for anything that'll help. You know what I'm saying? Anything that'll soothe you.
That's not
Right
actually
now, you
true.
said,
That's not actually true. I'm an
okay,
8
well,
plus year
eh,
veteran. I'm an 8 plus year veteran of the United States military, and there are plenty of
oh, I didn't know that.
atheists in
Okay.
there are plenty of atheists in foxholes. Pat Tillman, by the way, was an atheist and served and died. Well, people
Right.
in
Well, I
desperation
appreciate.
will people in their desperation will flail around for almost anything.
Right.
That tells you nothing at all
Right.
about whether or not what they're flailing for is real and whether or not they have good
Well,
reason to believe it.
you know, I appreciate your service. Thank you for that. My
Right.
old man's a
I'd
veteran.
appreciate
And
it
a
if
lot
you'd
of my
stop
family members.
interrupting me, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Um, no, when the shots rang off, I pulled my gun out. I got ready to shoot back, but I still felt that
There's-
feeling. It didn't go away. I mean, you can be ready for action, but
What does this
you're
have
still
to
gonna
do
be as
with
weak as the
God?
next man. Okay, it made me develop a question. Why does everybody believe in it if there's not something to it? Now I don't believe in
Everybody,
Jesus.
but Alex, everybody doesn't believe in a God, first of all.
At some point in
Also
your
there
life, you will.
also
No, sir.
okay,
No, sir. No,
I'm gonna
sir.
mute
Please
I'm gonna
stop
mute you for a
interrupting
second.
promise and making shit up and listen so that you can learn.
I muted him for now. And Alex, I know that you're wanting to show that you're listening by saying yes, yes, sir, all the things you're saying, but because of the lag, it actually hinders the conversation. So it's easier if you let us finish what we're saying and then you respond. But first of all, I did believe in a God for 20 plus years. So that time in my life already happened. And until somebody shows evidence and gives me a reason why I should go back to believing any God exists, I don't foresee that changing. So here's the problem. Believing something doesn't make it true. It doesn't matter if everyone believed it. That doesn't make the thing true. And we have had the majority of civilization believe all kinds of things that weren't true, that we later found out weren't true. So I think when people learn better and they stop filling in the blank with things that they don't have the right to fill in the blank with, like God, when they don't understand something, then they do better and they don't believe these things that we have no reason to believe.
Right, real quick, to kind of dovetail in with that, when I say you're wrong, I have friends who are lifelong atheists. I am on the board of directors for American Atheists, the national organization. We have plenty of members who are lifelong atheists. I have former friends who are third and fourth generation atheists. And we know there are people who do not have God beliefs, but there's an entire group of indigenous people in the Amazon called the Paraha that don't even have a concept of God, or didn't when we first interacted with them. And they definitely don't believe in a God. So while you are running around playing I got a gun, you got a gun, which is already stupid, you develop a question, which is, hey, why do people believe something if there's not something to it? Well, the answer is maybe they believe something because they're all similarly irrational. The claim, as Promise was pointing out, needs its own supporting evidence, not just a fallacious attempt at shifting the burden of proof to say, oh, maybe it's rational to believe in God until you prove he doesn't exist, which is basically what you're doing. That this fallacious argumentum ad populum, appeal to the popularity of it, all these people believe, tells you nothing at all about whether or not what they believe is true, because at some point, most people on the planet believed a number of things that turned out to be false.
Okay, is it my turn? The way I feel about it is that first of all, I'm a born atheist. Born. You understand what I'm saying? Like it never stuck to me. My mom loves church. My grandma, she loves church. She's 101 years old
So
by now.
I don't
I mean, by the
care.
way.
I don't care, and it's not relevant.
What, you gonna let
See,
me finish?
no, I'm not going to let you finish. That's why I'm interrupting you in order to get to something that's actually relevant. As I've mentioned in the last call and several other times, I don't need your backstory. Of course you were born an atheist. I'm convinced everybody is born without a belief in God, and it's something you're indoctrinated into or learn or come about later on. I don't need your
Yeah,
backstory.
it never stuck. It's never stuck with
I
me.
don't need your, go ahead, try talking over me. See how that fucking works for you. I don't need your backstory.
Here we go.
I need you to defend your newfound theism, and you are failing to do that or even come close to it. You have presented fallacy and false statement over and over, and now you're down to backstory. Prove there's a God.
Okay, check this out. Look at the data. Look at all the data of the people that believed in the past and the future maybe. Think about
Okay,
the
this is
information you
entirely
can
too
extract from
stupid
that.
for anybody to waste any time on. If you're going to say, go look at the future data, you're just barfing up
No, I'm
garbage.
saying, no, I know.
No, you are barfing
No.
up garbage, sir. No, sir, you are barfing up garbage, because I asked you to demonstrate that a God exists, and your reply is that we need to go look at the data. First of all, sir,
I can't rub there's
shut
no
your mouth.
genie. There's no
Shut your
genie.
mouth. Shut your mouth until I'm
Your
done
mouth.
talking.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I want you to do what you said you were going to do, which is defend the God concept. But if you're just going to say, hey, there's a bunch of data that shows people believe this, I'm well aware of that. That doesn't demonstrate a God exists. But if you're going to be stupid enough to suggest that I look at the future data as if it exists, now you're just a cartoon. You are not a serious thinker. You were an atheist until 2 months ago when gunshots rang out and you asked yourself a question, and that you think is sufficient to conclude that you have reason to believe in a God. That is so bizarrely confused and ridiculous that I don't know how to address it, but I do know I'm not going to let you sit here and keep talking. So present your evidence for a God, or we'll say goodbye and move on to somebody who will do what they said they'd do.
Okay, my evidence for God is that I'm not dead from gunshots, and my entire life's been lucky. Now, I know that's personal, and a lot of other people have personal testimonies too.
Nope.
Can you prove luck?
Alex.
Can you prove luck? Prove luck. Prove luck. Let's hear you prove something.
So once again, Alex.
Once again, other people's ideas. Ask me a question.
Alex, you are talking when you should be having your mouth shut. Because saying prove luck is also stupid. It is another attempt to shift the burden of proof. See, you can't prove God, so you want me to prove, oh, people are just irrational. Well, people are irrational, and I can prove it because there's 1,000 other gods that they believe in that you don't believe in. You've picked something. Also, prove luck. Well, first of all, luck isn't a thing. And I don't believe you that you've experienced unrealistic luck. But even if you had, you said your proof of God is that you're not dead from a gunshot wound. Well, neither the fuck am I. And I've been in positions where that was at least as likely as your gunshot story. And plus, so have thousands, if not millions of other people been in firefights and survived. If you think the fact that you survived when gunshots rang out is evidence for a God, I have nothing else to say. That is irrational, fallacious, unfounded. It is not evidence. And I suggest that you go and learn the basics of skepticism and critical thinking, because if you continue like this, there is nothing that you won't be gullible enough to buy into if you keep using Ooh, I've been really lucky. There must be a God, as the sort of reasoning that you're going to rely on.
Well,
It is
and
unwise. Promise. I'm sorry.
and Alex, I'll unmute you in a second, but I just want to say how arrogant it sounds to hear you cite your lack of being shot as something from God when 3,500 kids die from gunshot wounds every year. I have people that have personally been impacted by having a family member or a loved one die due to being shot. And so to say that there was something about you, that God just loved you more and showed up and gave you this luck that you want us to prove, is really, really wild. I don't understand how you were able to reach that conclusion that God protected you or whatever it may be. Somehow God was involved with you not getting shot. But all these kids die every year from gunshot wounds. And I'm talking little kids, like 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old.
I'm off mute. Like, I didn't hear the last tail end of what you said. Promise.
Do
Why
you
did
know
God
what my
save
main point
you and
was?
not all the kids that die?
Right.
Right. Okay. Well, that's an excellent retort. Promise. That's your name, right? Promise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a
Her
good one.
name's
That's
not
an
relevant to
excellent
your
one.
answer either, but I appreciate that you
Okay.
got it
Well, let me
right.
get down. Let me get down to it.
I've
Okay.
been waiting for the entirety of this call. I've been waiting for 15 minutes and 24 seconds for you to get down to it with something that makes sense and is relevant. So let's do it.
You haven't said too much either, Matt. You just been going on
Excuse
trying to
me.
dismantle what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me mute you again, Alex. That's my fucking job. You're here to present your reason, and I'm here to evaluate it. And then either say, Alex has got it. Alex has come up with an evidence-based syllogism that I think is good and confirms God and convinces me. Or I'm here to point out what has happened over and over with you, shifting the burden of proof fallacies, everything. Prove there's luck. I don't need to prove there's luck. Every time you say prove this instead of proving yours, you are admitting you do not have a reason. You ask me why people believe stuff. What did I do? I gave you a robust, thorough answer that is in line with the facts that all of us know and understand, that people are in fact uncomfortable with not knowing. They are in fact irrational. They are in fact prone to and have historically believed many things that turned out to not be true. It is simply a fact that the number of people who believe something, how strongly they are convinced of it, has nothing to do with whether or not it's true. Similarly, how lucky you feel you are has nothing to do with why you feel you're lucky and whether or not you are lucky and why. You are engaged in the same sort of sloppy thinking that all of us do, but you are not seeming to be willing to acknowledge even the basics of logic and rational thought. And so, yes, you don't think I've done anything here. I think everybody listening who isn't you understands which one of us has done all of the heavy lifting in this conversation, Promise and I, or you. So, for the last time, before we move on to somebody else, how did you rule out
Okay.
how did you rule out the idea that all of these people who believe in a God are simply mistaken?
How did I rule that out?
Yes.
That they were mistaken? I didn't believe
Yes.
in Jesus. I think the story is ridiculous. All the other mythological stories are ridiculous. I'm not calling about that. I'm talking about
Okay.
a higher power, not necessarily a Lord.
Alex, why on earth? It's like you
That's
can't
not what
even
Matt
listen.
asked.
It's not even in the ballpark. It's like you didn't pay any attention to the question. I didn't ask you about
No, I
Jesus
listened
or
to every word you
Christianity.
said.
No,
No, Matt didn't
you're
bring up
hearing, but you
Jesus.
are not listening. I asked you how you ruled out the possibility that all of the people who believe in gods are just wrong. How did you determine that they're not all wrong?
Oh, yeah, okay, that's not the same question you asked. but I'll
It is
answer
the
that.
same fucking question. No, sir.
It literally is.
It literally is, and we could put up a poll in chat, or we could fucking rewind. But once again, when I tell you, I've done this for ages. I am very careful and deliberate with my questions. I will make mistakes, but I won't make nearly as many mistakes as you continue to make every few seconds throughout the entirety of this conversation. You have concluded that because people believe there must be something to it, and that thing must be a god. And my question was, how did you rule out the likelihood or the possibility that they were wrong? I know what I asked. I've done this for ages. Now answer the fucking question, please.
Okay. Answer coming up. Think about how old the human race is. Okay. When we were developing from.
I'm going to mute you again. I don't need a preamble. I don't need answer coming up, and I don't need to go back to think about the human race. You, as a process, determined that all of the people who believed in a God can't have been wrong. I need you to show us, and this is the absolute knockdown last time I'm going to ask. I need you to explain to us how you determined that they can't all be wrong. Go.
Because naturally it's hardwired into us. And we were,
no, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Belief is not hardwired into us. And even if belief was a natural product of our lines of thinking, that wouldn't in any way demonstrate that everyone who believed in a God was in fact wrong or not wrong. You have no understanding at all about how to demonstrate the veracity of a claim. You have no concept of what sort of evidence might be required and what is sufficient to warrant believing in something, which is why when you had a wild circumstance in your life, you, never having been given the tools of critical thinking and not having the first clue about how to tell whether something's real, go leaping to a God.
That's a lie.
You've got to do all your work all over
okay.
again.
Check this out. Check this out.
No, I don't need to check it out.
I have a very good, well, you're going to listen then, right? I have very critical thinking skills.
No, you don't.
Better than you.
Okay.
I guarantee it.
Then, okay. Alex, you never answered my question, which is, how did you figure out that God was a part of saving you from gunshots, but not the thousands of innocent kids that die every year? We just kind of skirted around that.
Me because I definitely didn't say that God saved me. I didn't say that. I said,
do you think God was involved? Do you think God was part of you not getting shot?
Hell no. I really don't.
Okay, I'm going to mute you right now because now you're just a fucking liar. Because I took notes. And when I asked you to demonstrate what is the reason that you are convinced that there's a God, you said, because I'm not dead from gunshots. And now when Promise has politely waited for you to get back to it, has now asked you if you think God is the reason that you weren't killed, you're like, hell no. You, sir, are a liar. You are disingenuous. I don't know if you are just ridiculous and irrational or if you're trying to prank us. But when asked why you believe in God, you said it's because you're not dead. And then when asked if you think God had something to do with why you're not dead, your answer is hell no. You are in such a contradictory place that you are either lying or so confused you need professional help. Which one is it, Captain Rational?
Okay, check this. Listen.
Can I, no. Alex, I'm gonna try one last question that I think might either get us on track or show that this call needs to be over. Can you tell Matt and I very succinctly why we should believe that a God exists?
Because otherwise you wouldn't be breathing and talking. Simple as that.
How do you know that? What's your evidence of that? How do you know that that's true?
It's actually false. I don't believe in a
God.
And
people,
listen.
I'm not done talking.
No, I'm not going to listen. You're going to listen. It's my fucking show. You are demonstrably false. I do not believe in a God, and I am breathing and talking. Therefore, your assertion about why it's essential that we believe in a God is false. Captain, more rational than me, you have committed more fallacies in the last 23 minutes than I have in the last 23 months. But when we ask something and you say, oh, it's important for you to believe in God because otherwise you wouldn't be breathing or talking, you are demonstrably false. I do not believe in a God, and I am breathing and talking. QED.
The reason that I'm not dead from a bullet wound wasn't because some entity came and scooped the bullet out of the air like the Matrix. That's not what happened.
We didn't say that. Okay, Alex, if you're not going to stay on the same topic that we're on, and if you're not going to acknowledge when what you've said has been directly fucking shown to be false, I don't care to continue talking to you. Promise didn't say anything about God scooping the bullet out. Promise asked you if God was the reason that you weren't dead. And she asked that because previously when I said, what is your reason for believing in God? It was because I'm not dead. We're not the ones with the communication problem here. So once again, are you going to acknowledge that when you said that we need to believe in God, because if we don't, we can't breathe and talk, that you were wrong?
Say that last part again. The beep cut you off.
Yes. Well, Promise said, why should we believe in God? And you said, because if we don't, we can't be breathing or talking, which is clearly false. Would you like to acknowledge that that's false and try to find a way to rehabilitate it, or are we going to move on?
Okay. To answer Promise's question, the reason I'm not dead is because there's a future laid out.
No, Alex,
sir.
Alex,
No,
that's not the question that Matt just asked you. Are you paying attention to the conversation that we're trying to have with you, or are you just having your own conversation like somewhere else? Because we just covered why we don't even need to get back to your answer about that. Matt went and asked you this other question. This is the problem with why, like, with not answering questions as we ask them, is then things get confusing. But Matt just made it very clear what he's asking you. You asked him to repeat his question. Do you remember what it was that Matt just asked you?
He asked me to explain what you asked me. You said, are you going to answer Promise's question?
No,
That's
sir.
what he said.
No, sir. No, I fucking
That's
didn't.
not what he said.
Rewind the tape. Rewind the tape.
Let me ask. I don't need to rewind it,
I can't wait to make a
dumbass.
clip of this.
I don't need to rewind it. I'm going to ask you the same question again.
Ask you.
Are you ready to concede that when you answered Promise that the reason we need to believe in God is because if we don't, we couldn't speak or talk? Are you ready to concede that that statement you made was false and try to rehabilitate it? Or are we done?
Okay, to further explain that.
No, I'm sorry. I just asked you a yes or no question. I just asked you an either or question. Okay. So then I need you to say, I acknowledge that what I said was false and I would like to rehabilitate my position.
I would like to rehabilitate my false position.
Well, you kind of got there, but okay, we'll go with that. That you are now acknowledging that what you said was bullshit, and now you would like to correct that.
Well, it's convoluted. It's convoluted.
No, please
it's convoluted.
Please do. I don't need you to talk until I'm ready. I don't need you to talk until we ask you the question. You have no longer have a right to speak unless we ask you a question. That's what happens when you demonstrate that you don't have a fucking clue about how to have an honest conversation. So the question that Promise to ask you was, why should Promise and I believe in God?
Okay, you should believe in God because many before you have, almost all of them, at some point in time of their life, they believed in God. You and Promise, including me. All the atheists out there, the majority of them at one point in time believe.
Okay, Alex, I've muted you again because you clearly don't listen and you aren't being serious. You think we should believe in God because many before us have. And as I pointed out, the number of people who believe something, the strength of their conviction, And the length of time that they believed and the length of time that belief has persisted tells you nothing at all about whether or not it's true, Mr. More Rational Than You. That would be a population fallacy, an argumentum ad populum, an appeal to the popularity of the idea. That is a demonstrable fallacy. It is a known fallacy. Mr. You understand reason better than I do. But you also then repeated your lie. You amended it to be that the majority of atheists used to believe. Okay, let's go down this path of Promise used to believe, I used to believe. We stopped believing when we realized there was not sufficient evidence for the claim and there was no rational argument to justify the claim. You, on the other hand, say you were born an atheist and a couple months ago, you turned into a theist. And when we asked why, you did not give a rational argument. You gave fallacious arguments over and over and over. And then when we asked you to expand on it further, you then lied and said that everybody believes in a God, which is not only irrelevant and fallacious, but it's also untrue. Now you're amending it to say, well, most people believed in a God, which is irrelevant and fallacious. Instead of running around pretending and claiming that you are better at critical thinking than I am, you should really go demonstrate that you are better at critical thinking than anybody, because right now you're among the worst critical thinkers I've ever engaged with.
Well, talking about this particular subject against what you're saying is kind of difficult to wrestle. You know what I'm saying? Considering
That's not my
that
problem.
I have no
That's your problem.
foundation. I have no foundation. I have no
That's
foundation
your
to stand
problem.
on. Considering my whole life, I've never believed in any of this God stuff.
Your whole
But
life
Alex.
is irrelevant.
when you get,
Alex,
what's up, Promise? Yes, ma'am.
so you know that the majority of people used to believe in geocentrism, which is the idea that the Earth is the center of everything. They also used to believe that the Earth was flat. And then eventually we figured out
I
that
would have
that was
never believed
wrong.
that.
And you don't know
Okay,
that. That's
I'm going to
really
mute
arrogant to
Alex
say.
because Alex
You have no idea.
absolutely thinks he's 19 times smarter than he actually is. Oh, I would never
Well,
fall for
and
that. Dude, you just fell for the most obvious bullshit repeatedly. I'm sorry, I promise I'll stop.
the next thing I was going to get to is to try to explain to you this fallacy that Matt took the time to already explain to you, which is this appeal to popularity. If, let's say, everybody stops over the next 100 years, everybody pretty much stops believing that gods exist. The majority of people don't believe gods exist. 10,000 years from now, does that mean now we can say gods don't exist? Is that how this works? That based on what is popular, that's what's true?
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at with y'all. Check this out. Listen, Jesus is going to eventually vanish, and all those other gods, the Quran and stuff like that, that's going to go away because
Alex,
it is
you
quite
didn't
ridiculous.
answer what I
I'm
said.
about to.
This,
I'm about
does,
to. I'm answering.
no,
This
no,
is
no,
the
no.
answer. This is the answer.
Nope. No, it's not. Here's my question for you. Does something being popular make it true?
You have to consider the data. Sometimes
No,
it is,
that's not
sometimes
the
it's not.
answer to the question. Alex,
Yes.
that's not the
Yes.
answer to the
Okay,
question.
no, okay, the answer is no. The answer is no.
Alex finally got it right. Sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. So the number of people who believe something isn't relevant to whether or not it's true. It's the data that shows whether or not it's true, correct?
Right.
The history
No,
behind it.
not the history at all. Historically, people have believed all kinds of wrong stuff. The way we know it's true is not because they believed it or because it's history, but because of the data. So what's the data for God?
I'm not talking about the minutia. I'm not talking about the small things. I'm talking about the overall sense that there is a presence, that there is a Lord over you.
You're not listening.
Not Lord, but
you're not listening to me, and so now I'm done listening to you. But Promise can continue trying. Like legitimately, you will not hear another word from me. I promise you, Alex. I have no interest in. You are so much better at reasoning than me. I'm now stunned.
I am. I see you turning red over there. You turning red as a cherry.
Alex,
you look like I'm
nobody's turning red.
It shouldn't be that way.
Alex, okay, I'm muting you. So here's the problem, Alex. I don't actually want to talk to you anymore either, because the way you just spoke to my friend for no reason, when Matt's been really patient with you this entire time, despite how arrogant you've been back and forth and interrupting and all of that. Before I let you go, I am going to say, You may have been an atheist your whole life. You have not applied skepticism to anything. And that's how you just found yourself so easily converted to something, but you can't even tell us why. We had a conversation for 33 minutes now, and we haven't learned anything. So I think you should go take this experience you've had and apply a lot of questions to it instead of assertions. I think you need to be learning more and asking more questions and being skeptical before you can ever call yourself a critical thinker. On that note, I'm going to let you go. Apparently, I'm the one wanting to end the phone calls today because I'm not in the mood. Like,
it is wild to be like, oh, I'm so much better than you at critical thinking that I see you turning red. No, I'm frustrated that the world continues to get stupider, and so do the calls.
Also, turning red is indication of nothing. I'm probably going to turn red multiple times during this show because it's 1,000,000 degrees in this room, and that happens. So just thing after thing after thing pointing to zero critical thinking skills. Anyways, are we ready to try again with another theist caller?
I'm ready. I'm optimistic that we can find something that's definitely stronger.
Cool. I was looking at the second caller here, Paul. So let's bring Paul on. Hey, Paul, you are live on the Sunday show with Promise and Matt.
How's it going?
Good. So what do you want to tell us which God you believe in, why you believe in God? How do you want to start this?
Well, I mean, my question, I see that the theme of the talk or your show today is why should we believe, or give us a reason to believe. Sorry, I can't see this thing right now, but there's something in that terms. And my question is, if you don't believe in something, why do you need evidence for something you don't already believe in?
If you want us to change our minds and believe it, the main thing here is I want to believe things if they're true. So if it's true that a God exists, which theists keep asserting over and over and over again and have been doing forever, then I would like somebody to be able to show evidence that that's true, especially when they're trying to do things like take political office and make legal choices that impact me and others. So I want to know if it's true or not, if a God exists. It's not that I want to believe a God exists or I don't want to believe that a God exists. I want to believe what's true. And if a God is real, I would like to know that.
Gotcha. Do you believe in the pink spaghetti monster that lives on the rings of Uranus?
What do you think, Paul? Why can we actually have a real conversation without leading questions? I'd like to know what God you believe in and why.
Paul's not serious. Paul doesn't believe in a God. Paul's a troll.
No, I'm not at all. So I would say the argument for a creator, at least the way I see it, is the origins of the universe, right? And either the universe came from nothing or it came from something. And if it came from something, we eventually have to arrive at something that was uncaused, something that was eternal. And that's what most people would argue is a creator.
So I'm interested in you. So do you believe that there's a creator God?
Absolutely.
Okay, why?
Exactly what I just said is that if you look at the origins of the universe, and
we don't have the ability to look at the origin of the universe.
Well, from the evidence and the data we have now, right? We have evidence and data
from
now.
The evidence and data we have now.
The Big Bang.
From the evidence and data we have now, we have exactly one universe. We have none to compare it to, and we can only investigate the universe mathematically up to the Planck time, which is just after the expansion began. We have nothing but speculation to determine what the state of the universe was, what could have possibly changed that state, whether or not there's a multiverse, whether there's universal creation stuff, whether or not whatever the potential cause is, even if there was a first cause that is distinct from the universal substance, whether or not that being is a being, whether it's an agent, whether it still exists, whether it's a natural force in some you have no way of exploring this. So we get to a point and we say, damn, It's really uncomfortable. But when we say, hey, why is there something rather than nothing? The answer has to be, we don't know, but there is.
So that's a conversation stopper. When you say you don't know,
I don't give a shit.
We're not having this conversation.
You don't get to, Paul, I'm not going to believe in a God just so we can have a fucking conversation. If you believe in something that isn't testable or verifiable, it is pointless for us to sit here and have a conversation about it. I want the conversation stopped. I would like for people to stop believing in shit without good reasons. And if that means that the conversation is over, good, because there are other conversations that need to happen about real problems in the world that might have solutions.
Well, you brought up a good point. You said believing in things without testable or empirical evidence. Do you believe in gravity?
First of all, I didn't say empirical evidence. You're adding words. But yes, I believe that gravity is the word that we use to describe how matter interacts based on its mass and distance.
Okay, can you see gravity? Can you test for gravity?
Yes, we can test for gravity. We can even show where gravity is not necessarily uniform. We don't have to see something in order to know that it exists. We can see the effects of things as well. And since gravity
Okay,
isn't
so it's the same
visible,
argument for a creator.
Stop talking. No, it's not the same argument for a creator. You're full of shit. You are a troll, and this is patently obvious to somebody who's done this for as long as I have, because there is no, we are observing a phenomenon that we are then labeling gravity. There is no observed phenomenon that we need to label God, and there certainly isn't an observed phenomenon that we need to label, here's an intelligent, sustaining creator and governor foundation of morality.
Again, it's true you can't see gravity. You agree with that, right?
I'm not going to keep agreeing with stuff just so you can try to get back to your script. I already answered your question thoroughly. Do you have evidence for God or not?
So again, what is evidence? You said
I'm sorry,
things that you could demonstrate,
that's
right?
an either or. That is an either or. The question was, do you have evidence for God or not?
Well, I have arguments, right? The argument is the origins of the universe.
That's not an answer either, Paul. So I'm guessing the answer is that no, you do not have evidence for God, in which case this is a waste of time and we should move on.
You don't have evidence for the non-existence of the pink spaghetti monster in Jupiter.
You're a troll. I don't believe you.
Well, you're
I don't
obviously
believe you
a troll. You're not, yeah. So first of all, I don't need evidence for the non-existence of anything. By definition, things should not be accepted to exist until there's evidential warrant for it. That's what's called the null hypothesis, that there is no connection between this invisible pink whatever and your God, or the fact that Paul is a reasonable person. There's no reason to think that Paul is in fact a reasonable person until there's evidence for it. And Paul doesn't give us evidence that he's a reasonable person at all. And so I am still unconvinced that Paul is a reasonable person. That is proper logical, rational flow of critical thinking, assigning the burden of proof, beginning with a null hypothesis. My null hypothesis is that Paul is not sincere and is not going to present actual arguments for God. Paul is trying to rile me up or something. But in any case, it's up to Paul to prove that he has rational arguments and evidence. And Paul does not. Thanks, Paul.
Bummer. I was hoping somebody had an argument. Tim's been waiting for a while. Yeah, right. That's how today is going so far. If you're a theist and you're watching right now and you're frustrated that that troll just called and that the caller before has not applied skepticism to his beliefs and that the caller before that wasn't calling the right show, I feel your frustration. Call us. Let us know what God you believe in and why, and we can have a conversation. But for now, let's chat with Tim.
Hi.
Hello, Tim. You are on the line with Promise and Matt.
Hi. So my argument is in favor of reincarnation.
Is it an argument that's based on evidence that will show that reincarnation is real, or is this an argument that you think shows reincarnation is possible or probable or likely?
I guess I would say probable or likely.
Okay. How are you defining reincarnation? Like, are you saying I can be reincarnated?
Am I saying? Yeah, I would think everyone would likely be reincarnated.
Okay. When you say that I can be reincarnated, does that mean I come back as me?
In the sense that you have some vague memory. It's yourself, but not your
Okay.
body
So are you aware that
necessarily.
this, oh, wait, it's myself and not my body? So you think there's a soul?
I don't know if I'd call it a soul because I think it has a physical. I think it's
Okay.
based on
Is
physical elements.
Is there something about me that survives my physical demise and can then inhabit another physical form?
In the same way that if you put the hard drive of a certain computer into another computer, it's not the same computer exactly, or the same
Tim,
CPU
it's
and the same hard drive.
Tim, it's the same hard drive. Hard drives are physical.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think what makes up your
This is
foot
so frustrating,
isn't
Tim, because I'm genuinely
okay.
all I want to know
Can I
is
make
what
my
the
argument?
fuck. Can you stop fucking talking when I'm telling you exactly what I'm looking for?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out, what do you mean by reincarnated? Because there are some people who think, oh, I'll be reincarnated as a tree and I won't have any thoughts or memory about me. There are others that think I'll be reincarnated someday because everything is cyclical and, given unlimited time, another version of me will be reincarnated or exist again, even though it won't necessarily be tied to me in any way. Then there are other people who think that, oh, we have past memories of previous lives. I'm trying to figure out what fucking model of reincarnation you're fucking talking about. I don't know why you're being difficult. What the fuck do you believe and why should we believe it?
Okay, so I think whatever physical matter or energy that constitutes our consciousness and our experience of life will, given an unlimited amount of time, and it seems like time is unlimited, will someday reconvene, and then we will be reincarnated in some way or another.
Okay, how do you prove that?
I can't prove it absolutely,
Then you
but
shouldn't believe
given
it.
an unlimited amount of time.
No, I didn't. No, Tim, I didn't say how do you prove it absolutely. I asked how do you prove it. I was using a colloquialism. What is your evidence-based, reasonable argument to support your proposition?
Well, a lot of times you guys will talk about the monkey typewriter thing.
No, we won't, Tim. And I don't give a shit about the monkey typewriter thing. I'm asking you for the last time, what is the evidence-based argument that you have that shows that your version of reincarnation is likely true?
Time seems to be infinite. So therefore, our matter or energy will most likely reconvene, given an unlimited amount of time. Anything can happen.
Promise. I'm done with Tim because Tim doesn't know what an evidence-based reasoned argument is at all, and begins with time seems to be infinite, which is also, it is perhaps one directionally infinite, but the universe is probably going to die, and it had what we describe as a beginning, at least in its growth. So Tim doesn't understand the facts of reality and time, and he doesn't know how to make an argument. I'm stuck. Will you please help me?
I'll try. Tim, so I'm struggling at how you determined that there's something that continues after our body. That doesn't make sense to me. Do you mean consciousness?
Well, we know that our matter and whatever energy goes through us will continue.
But I'm talking about what is something that's only me. That's like this, my memories and all of that. Do you have any evidence that memories continue on? That they are a thing that can carry on?
Well, whatever the configuration of you that makes you you, that would be you. If it reconfigured,
that's my brain.
and I think if
but Tim, there's no evidence of anything. What would it be? Do you have evidence of something that exists outside of my brain that can continue on after my brain is dead, burned, turned into dirt?
well, the matter that composes it. Could it reconfigure?
But if it's burned,
why
and if
can it reconfigure in your?
what? So you're saying reconfigure? What do you mean by that? So if I get cremated, my brain is incinerated. Do you think these little pieces of dust, ash, microscopic things are going to someday find each other again and turn back into a brain in somebody else?
If time is literally unlimited, then yes.
Okay, that's stupid.
Is time unlimited?
And
it appears to be.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Tim, are you aware that every atom of my body is different from the atoms that began with my body? Like, there's not a single atom in my brain that was there when I was 5, right?
Yes.
Do those atoms that are no longer a part of me and yet still exist somewhere else, do they contain me?
In some way or another, but I guess
this is
as your consciousness, no. They don't
Never mind.
They don't contain your consciousness.
Never mind.
No, they don't contain. I'll say no.
They don't contain anything but themselves. There's no evidence to suggest that they're carrying little fragments of me or memories of me. There's no evidence at all that something can be reconstituted. And also, the time within our universe is not currently unlimited, but there's also infinite possibilities, and in infinite time, that doesn't mean that they are all going to happen at all. You have not demonstrated, even in the slightest, that it is in fact possible for the matter and energy and pattern configuration that makes me right now to ever occur anywhere else in the universe, because it may be the case that the pattern, matter, and energy that make me right now are necessarily confined to this particular moment in space-time. As a matter of fact, it is a virtual certainty that they are specifically confined to this particular moment in space-time. Because if you took all this matter and energy in the Star Trek transporter thing and copied it over somewhere else, you would have a copy of me that would be located in a different space and time than I am, and it would not be me. I am, by definition, the law of identity, this specific collection and changing collection of matter, energy, and pattern. So your bong rip reincarnation is dismissed.
Well, hold on. If you're saying that you were no, hold on. If what you're saying, we were ourself, even though it was different matter and energy, then ourself must be made of something different than matter.
No,
energy.
Sir, you've missed the point. You've missed the point of the ship of Theseus. So let's say there's a ship and I replace the rudder. Is it still the same ship? Yeah, because we changed the definition from this ship contains this rudder to this ship contains this rudder. It is the continuity of the definition, not the continuity of the pattern. If after 20 years, every single nut, bolt, and scrap of fiber in that ship is now different, it is still the ship of Theseus because we change the definition of the ship of Theseus every time something changes. Just like the definition of who Matt is changes constantly as I change. When I lose a little bit of skin, when I lose some atoms, when I lose some weight, when I change my mind, when I'm awake, when I'm asleep. The definition of me is not a static thing. It is dynamic, and it is necessarily tied to this specific space-time package of goods, period.
You don't think there's anything with the continuity from how would you just feel that there is? It's like false memories, like you just feel that you are continual from your original self. It's made of something. It has to be made of something else, but matter or energy.
You have no clue what you're talking about, and you don't listen. The definition of me changes.
I think you don't.
Stop fucking talking, and you'll learn something. The definition of me changes as I change. when I change my mind, I don't become I am a different person than I was before that, but there's a continuity of experience so that I can remember who I used to be, who this package used to be.
And that is just solely a memory of it. It doesn't actually, it wasn't you. It's a different thing, you're saying.
Wow. I've tried to explain the ship of Theseus. I would recommend you go read about it. Maybe if you sit down and think about it when you're not on a phone call, maybe it'll make more sense to you. But all we're saying is that, hey, when Arden and I started dating 4 years ago, I was a different person. I was also a different person at the beginning of this show. I was a different person at the beginning of this conversation, and I was a different person at the beginning of this sentence and this word and this sound. Because I am a dynamic being, and the definition of what makes me me is changing as I change. And so there's a context in which we say, oh, Matt did this once upon a time. And when we say that, like Matt went to a snake expo. Yes, I did in the past. Oh, but you're different now. Yes, I am different now. But the timeline version of me, the continuity of me, includes that event. It is not, I am not now at a reptile expo. I've been to reptile expos. And so those memories of what past versions of me did are the continuity experience. There's no evidence that anything about the continuity of me and my experience persists after I'm dead. And it may in fact be, and is likely impossible, for the matter and energy and pattern that is me right now to exist anywhere other than exactly where it is. Because as soon as you move it to a new space and a new time, it is already different.
But what you said is that it can be a bit different and still be you. So it could reconvene in a way that was a little bit different.
No. What I said is the continuity timeline me, that is I am me, and now I'm me, and now I'm me, and now I'm me. There's 4 or 5 me's right there that just said that to you. The me is always right here now in the present space-time. The other me, the other meaning or usage of the word me, is the continuity of my life, the life package. I am not the 5-year-old me, but this package includes the 5-year-old me. I am not currently the 5-year-old me. And here's the other thing that shows why your position is not only not been demonstrated, but may in fact be false. I change every possible instant, which means if your model is correct, in the future, there will be infinitely many me's from every possible instance. And they'll just be reconstituted somewhere different, which means they won't be the same anymore. Your concept is incoherent and doesn't have evidence to support it.
Well, whatever is keeping the continuity between your physical self when you're young and your physical self when you're not, as in the present, why couldn't that small bit, whatever it's composed of, matter or energy, why couldn't that reconvene in some way that it feels like it's you in some other body?
So, okay, I don't care if something feels like it's me in some other body. That happens on Star Trek all the time. They're not the same person. But you talked about whatever it is that maintains the continuity. It's not a thing that maintains the continuity. It is definitionally how we are describing this, that this cell phone is the same one I bought, even though we know that if we're being specific about the matter, energy, and pattern, this is not the same cell phone that I bought on the day that I bought it. But this cell phone is the same package of continuity as the cell phone the day that I bought it.
So you don't really think you're still the same the same consciousness feeling that you were when you were born? You just think it seems like you are because of your memories? Is that
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
Yes.
seem like I am. It doesn't even seem like I am. I have no memory or recollection of what it was like to be born, and neither, I think, does almost anybody else, because human brains don't develop to where they have any sort of agency, to where they have a theory of mind until they are beyond the newborn stage. So even if you were able to say, oh, the infant Matt is exactly the same, which it's not. Is it the infant me that gets regenerated, or the 1-year-old me, or the 1-year-old and 1 day me, or the 1-year-old 1 day and 1 minute me, or the 1 year 1 day 1 minute 1 second 1 picosecond version of me? Which one is the one that you think becomes me? Because there's a me in my continuity of my past, which is a fundamentalist Christian Southern Baptist, and that's not me now, but it is still a part of my continuity of experience. Which one gets reconstituted, and how do you know?
Well, your 1 year self and your 1 year and 1 month self are maybe 90% similar. So,
That's
I mean,
so
it could
I
be a
don't,
90%.
Tim, I don't need 90%. I need identity. That's what the law of identity is. It's not the law of 90% similar means I can
But
have fuzzy thinking and advocate for bullshit. You have no evidence for it. There's evidence against it. You don't understand the concepts. You don't understand identity. You don't understand the nature of defining identity in continuity. There's no reason to
but
think that
you'll still admit
there's no
you is
reason
you.
there's no reason to think that your speculation about reincarnation is anything more than your confusion about all of those topics.
There's no reason. But you will admit that you as a child is in some way you now. Only because that's how we accept it, or that's how society sees it, or even though it's different. You admit that those two things are different.
I'm done trying to explain things to you that you aren't ready to understand, Tim. You need to stop worrying about what I think and go off and rehabilitate your reincarnation model and do some investigating on the ship of Theseus, on the law of identity, on the nature of dynamic beings in a dynamic universe. Because what you're doing right now is trying to find something in my position that's assailable, because yours has been completely demolished and now you're floundering because you don't know what to do. Whether my position is correct or not, yours is broken. You need to go fix that.
Can you, in simple terms, just tell me what the definition of the law of identity is?
Tim, when I said I was done explaining things to you that you weren't ready to understand, what did you think that meant?
Well, I think it would help the conversation move along, but maybe you'd rather seem
Tim,
like
I think that you should go
me.
back and I think that you should go listen to the conversation again, and it'll be easier to pay attention to the stuff Matt already explained that way. But I think more importantly, like what Matt just said, more importantly than trying to understand anything that Matt said, I still have not heard a good reason to believe your position. Matt's already done a really good job, not asserting something back, but really shutting down a lot of the possibility for reincarnation. But I haven't heard like an actual good argument for it other than why not. And to me, that's not a good reason to believe something. So I think if you go back, listen to the conversation, maybe call back another show, and Skeptalk could even be a great one for you to call tomorrow. So
he just said the matter and the energy reconvening would not
Tim,
be
are you
good.
listening?
Okay, all right.
Tim, are you
I'm
even
listening.
listening to anything I just said?
He's not listening. He's waiting for his turn to talk.
Yes, I'm listening.
No, you're not, you
That's
liar.
very frustrating. Yeah,
Okay,
I think if you
You are.
I think if you care about having this conversation, then you can go listen to the call again and call. Maybe you could even call tonight. Forrest will be on, I believe, and you can have the conversation then if you have a little bit better understanding of what it is that you're trying to assert. So, thanks,
I'd
Tim.
also recommend that when somebody calls you a liar, you don't reply by saying, okay, everybody's a liar, because you responded to something that nobody said, which shows that you are dishonest even in your response to being called a liar, which is really kind of funny.
Sorry, I already dropped the call, but
No,
yes,
it's fine.
that was there. Yeah, I didn't feel like that. I would be interested to know just in a human to human conversation, not on the show, why Tim why he wants to believe in reincarnation so badly, because it didn't seem to me that it's because he thinks it's true. It seems to me like he's just having to, make this be true. It's a dogma rather than just something that he found convincing evidence for. So maybe he'll call Skeptalk, or maybe he'll call the show tonight.
Maybe.
I see an interesting call that just came in, if you're down, from Joe, who, fingers crossed, might be willing to answer our questions. So let's see. Hey, Joe, you are live with Matt and Promise.
Good afternoon, Matt and Promise. Good to talk to you.
Hey, Joe.
So it says here you believe in the Christian God, which, first of all, I appreciate you already offering that up, just because it makes the conversation more honest for all of us to have, if that's what you really believe. And then you say that you would like to assert that belief in God is reasonable. I'd kind of like to rephrase that. Can you just tell Matt and I why you think we should believe in the Christian God?
Well, no. And so let me be honest up front and say you have the right to decide whether or not you want to have this conversation. You may not be interested in what I have to say, because I want to acknowledge right off the bat, I cannot convince you that God exists. My assertion
That's not what
that
we
it
asked,
is
Joe.
okay.
So,
or why you should even believe. Let me say my assertion first
you
is
do
that
realize
it is
that's the whole
reasonable for
purpose
me
of
to
the
believe.
show, right? Okay, you realize it's a whole
Well,
purpose
I
of the
think
show.
I would take.
Hang on. Is it possible for something to be reasonable to believe and not be true?
Yes.
Yes, I
but
agree. Thank
not
you.
if it's known. Not if it's known to be false.
Hang on. I'm done.
Cool. Joe?
I'm not going to let Joe pop my Zen by not letting me get to the whole. I wanted to desperately.
I'm sorry
if
there's a delay.
Stop talking.
I tried to
stop
shut
talking,
off as soon as.
Stop talking.
Sure.
Stop fucking talking, Joe. Nobody was fucking talking to you. There was no reason for you to chime in at all. I'm trying to find a way to make Joe's topic at least acceptable for the show, because Joe believes something, recognizes that just because you have good reasons or are convinced you have good reasons, that doesn't mean that it's true. It's not necessarily true. You could have good reason to believe that the sun goes around the earth, and we did for quite a while. It was a reasonable belief, but it turned out to not be true. So I had follow-up questions, but I don't get to any of my follow-up questions. And those follow-up questions were designed to see if there's anything that we can get out of Joe's call. Because if Joe thinks he has personal revelation and personal reason that doesn't apply to anybody else, Joe's call is not a good use of anybody's time. Congratulations on having your completely untestable, unfalsifiable, unshareable, unwarranted belief in everybody else's eyes, but it does us no good. As Hume pointed out, revelation is necessarily first person, and everybody else it's hearsay. But I can't even get a fucking sentence out of my mouth to try to get there without getting walked all over. And you think I'm unaware, after 20 years of fucking doing this, that there's a delay? That time
Joe, do you have,
I was just concerned. Oh, sorry.
Do you have evidence for the existence of the Christian God?
I have what I would call support.
Why wouldn't you call it evidence?
Because it is not testable.
Why do you believe things that your justification is untestable?
The reason I believe that is because it aligns with other ways of defining reasonableness, such as personal experience, moral reasoning, coherence with other beliefs, existential needs.
Yeah, but those are all things like somebody calling in that, yeah, those are all things that we hear from Muslims or any other belief in any other kind of God or supernatural idea. So do you have specific evidence for this Christian God? Because otherwise it's just like, well, I had this personal experience and I think this is a good reason. And it's, I understand for you that's compelling, but it is also for a bunch of other religions, for them, for that person. So I'm
Right.
trying to
I
figure
think
out if you have something that sets apart what you believe and like a reason to present other than a personal experience or something like that. That's, unfalsifiable.
I think there are ways to compare the potential legitimacy of what I would call logical possibilities.
What would you say is the
And
strongest reason that for you being convinced that a God exists?
The strongest reason is a personal change in personality that happened in an instant. Something rewired in my head in a moment. That's the strongest reason for my belief. And I think my objection was just to the statement, I wish people would stop believing in something they have no good reason to believe. And I acknowledge
Joe,
that it may not be interesting to talk to me about this, but and that's your right.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm still having the conversation. I'm just curious because I've also heard that from Muslims. I have a friend that personal experience and having, this testimony of being addicted to something and then instantly complete removal of this desire, gone forever, and as far as we can see now, as their reasoning. And so I still don't see how that's a good reason when people can use that for all kinds of other things. I can tell you that I had some really crippling fears and anxieties that the actual second I stopped believing in a God, those things went away and have never come back since. And it's been a huge change in my life for the better. So is that validity towards there being no gods?
I think all of the above are reasonable positions because I don't think there's solid evidence proving one versus the other. I would say a Muslim is reasonable. I would say you and Matt are perfectly reasonable.
Okay, so how did you determine to have the position that you have then, instead of one of those other positions? If you think they're all perfectly reasonable.
To be perfectly honest, it's going to boil down to because I want to and I found purpose in it.
Do you think that that's a good reason to believe something, though? Because there are people that use that exact same justification to believe horrific things, or things that harm themselves. There are people that want to believe they can take over a country and harm others, and it's okay because they're king. Like, do we think that it's okay for people to just say, well, I like it and it helps me, and so therefore that's a good reason to believe this thing?
I don't know if it's relevant to whether or not it's okay to believe in a God. I would say that it's wrong to take those actions and justify it with God. And I recognize Christianity has done that. And to the point that
I just mean
I am able, I would apologize for that.
No, I don't even mean when it comes to religious beliefs. I mean to anything. There are people that believe it's okay to abuse their wife because she's a lesser version of them. Does that make that belief okay? It makes the person happier. It makes their life better. So why can't they do it?
Well, I think
I'm just not tracking with the idea. Right, because you have that idea, but I'm not tracking
can boil down
with
to do no harm. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, but that's my bad for getting us off track there. I'm trying to figure out why you would be willing to believe something just because you like it and you chose it and you want to believe that thing, when we can point to a million ways where that's not a good idea. So why does this get that special privilege of I believe it because I just want to? Here, let me phrase it this way. Do you care if what you believe is true or not?
Yes, and I hope that if I encountered evidence that it is not true, I would change.
Do you need to encounter evidence that something is... Yeah. In that case, why
I
aren't
missed
you
that,
believing
Matt. I'm
all the
sorry.
so you just said that you also think Islam is a reasonable belief, being an atheist is a reasonable position. So why wouldn't you apply that there?
In like, why am I not an atheist or a Muslim?
Right. Why aren't you believing all these other things then until there's evidence against them? If you believe they're
That goes
reasonable
back to
positions.
personal experience, moral reasoning, coherence with my other beliefs, and just what works for me. I've found a purpose in Christianity that I haven't found in any of those other things.
Have you
Yeah,
tried
but if
Islam
there's a
before?
I have not. I know Muslims who I
how do you know it's
respect,
not better?
and
Yeah, what if that would
it
make
could
your
be.
life better?
Yeah, you don't actually
It could
care
So
be.
whether or not your beliefs are true. By
I do.
definition, you don't. No, by definition, you don't. Because if your beliefs are unfalsifiable, then you cannot have warrant to believe them. And you may believe in a God that is unfalsifiable, and you will continue to believe it until somebody provides you with evidence that it's false, because you have shifted the burden of proof. That is not rational, it is fallacious, and it is not consistent with someone who genuinely cares whether their beliefs are true. Because when you care if your beliefs are true, you seek to confirm it before you can believe it, and you seek to falsify it in order that you aren't deceived, and you're not doing that.
And if I may, possibility is the logical default, and there isn't a burden of proof for that.
No, sir. No, sir. Logical possibility allows for contradictory positions because we are not in a position of knowing what the truth is. Epistemic possibility is the issue. And I believe that a God is logically possible, in the sense that logical possibility is just saying we haven't proved it's impossible. But we also, if we began with it's impossible until such time as it's possible, we haven't demonstrated that either. That logical possibility is completely useless. It is not a function of epistemology, and it has no value in determining what is in fact real.
I mean, I think I would agree that it's not really relevant to determining what actually is fact.
Yeah. And if you care about what actually is fact, you wouldn't be sitting here spouting off logical possibility, because logical possibility is useless. An idea and its direct negation are both logically possible until one of them is shown to be impossible, correct?
Correct.
And so that makes it completely useless. Thank you.
I would say, in this sense, useless, but again, objecting to the idea that it is unreasonable for someone to do
It
that.
is unreasonable. By definition, it is only reasonable to believe things that are testable, which includes falsifiable, and supported by sufficient evidence to warrant it. If you do anything short of that, like, for example, is there any position that someone couldn't hold and just say, I take it as a matter of faith that this is correct?
I imagine they could take anything or at least make the statement they hold it as a matter of faith. Yes.
Right. So that means that faith is not a pathway to truth, right?
Known truth, correct.
Wow. You always got to add some extra little caveat thing in there. Whether it's known or not, as a matter of epistemology, it is not verifiably true, was the point. But logical possibility, faith is not a path to truth, and neither is logical possibility. What is a good path to truth? How do we tell what's actually true in reality, Joe?
We do our best, and we believe what we have shown to be true with evidence. We continue to pursue evidence. We continue to try and discover new things. All of those things are great. And I think to the extent that the church has rejected scientific inquiry, the church is absolutely wrong. And as I said, I don't know if you were on the line when I talked to Promise, I said that if I encountered evidence that my beliefs are untrue, I hope that I would reject them.
Well, first of all, congratulations for after you've shifted the burden of proof, ignoring that your position might be unfalsifiable, and then trying to present that you're reasonable because you might change your mind if you're proven wrong. None of that is rational. None of that is consistent with actually caring about what's true.
I think there's different standards of rationality. There's a philosophical standard as well as a scientific one.
Yeah, I don't
fully
give a fuck what you
concede
think
my
about
lack on
rationality.
scientific.
I'm taking it on faith that you don't have any understanding of rationality. I think that the grounds of rationality demonstrate that you don't have it, and everything you say about rationality is a waste of my time. How's that feel?
Fair enough. I tried to be upfront and honest about what I was going to talk about.
That was a question. That was a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How does that feel?
Please ask
Do
it
you
again.
have any way? Do you have any way to argue against that? Or am I just as right in asserting that you are wrong as you are right in asserting that you're right? That's the point.
I would say that you are just as right in asserting I may be wrong as I am in asserting that I may be right.
Okay, then we have. I promise I'm stuck, but I'm also.
Yeah, I think the thing is, Joe, I appreciate that you're trying to be honest here, and I think the issue here is I'm not convinced that you do care if what you believe is true or not, for similar reasons to what Matt was saying. And so, for example, you're saying you will continue believing this until given a reason not to. Well, I can think of several things. You know, do you believe, sorry, everybody, I'm going to bring up the pink unicorn glitter. Do you believe that right next to me right now is an invisible, pink, glittery unicorn god that rules over my life and controls everything?
I think it's highly unlikely. To the point
Do you
where
believe?
I would.
But do you believe it? Do you believe that god, that pink unicorn glitter god exists?
I would not assert that belief, no.
Right. So you're withholding belief, which is what I'm doing as an atheist, because I don't have a good reason. The same reasons that you are withholding your belief in this pink unicorn glitter god is the same reason I'm withholding belief from the Christian God and from every other God claim that's been presented to me so far, because they have all had the exact same amount of evidence that I have for this pink glitter unicorn god. Does that make sense to you?
Not entirely.
Which part am I losing you on?
Let me switch from the pink unicorn god to an alien in my neighborhood, if I may. If a neighbor said that they saw an alien or a pink unicorn in my neighborhood, or you say there's a pink unicorn beside you, that is one thing. If the entire town that you live in also says that they saw the pink unicorn, now there's more credence to that. I know that we're getting back to the previous caller and the appeal to popularity here a little bit, except that I'm not trying to use this as an assertion of truth. I'm trying to use
Joe,
this as a way of comparing one possibility to another, one unproven thing to another.
Point. You're missing my point in that I'm responding to you saying that you're going to believe something until given a good reason not to. And I'm saying, I don't think you should believe something unless you have a good reason to believe it. I don't think you should be sitting around waiting for evidence against something. I think you should make sure you have good reason to believe it before you have that belief. Otherwise, if you want to be intellectually honest, then you now need to start believing in pretty much every claim you ever hear until presented evidence against it. And that's not how logic works. That's not how we work as humans, thankfully. And that's clearly not how you work. You seem to, you managed to pick up a phone and call us. So you already are making decisions based off of reality. And you wouldn't be able to operate in reality if you believed in any unfalsifiable claim presented to you.
True. So my preference for Christianity, for instance, over the pink unicorn or atheism or something else, is ultimately going to come down to the sense of purpose that I found in my life. It's what makes me motivated to be a better person. It makes me motivated to want to better the world around me, all of that kind of stuff. I know that's not evidence, and you guys probably aren't interested in much of that, but that's where it's going to come down to is that
if
like you can be
what if you started doing drugs and they gave you that sense 10 times 10? Is that a good reason to now be an addict?
I think we have to talk about harm. Again, I really believe in an ethic of do no harm. And
What if you
it
think
would be
that it's not,
arguable
what if,
that
so,
harm.
okay, so Joe, let's say this. I don't think it's harmful if I do drugs. Let's say that. I think it's fine if I do them until I, rot. Just sit here and overdose over and over and over again. So I do drugs and it gives me a sense of purpose and meaning and I love it and it's my preference and I choose it. Is that a good thing now for me to be engaging in my life? Is that a good reason to bring something into my life?
Do we have real evidence that it's harmful? I think we do.
We'd have to decide that we think I care about harm. Let's say I don't, because a lot of people don't care about that sort of thing. What I'm trying to get at is your assertion that something making you feel good is not a good reason to believe something or practice it in your life.
Well, feeling good is different from purpose. I think that it's what motivates me to make the world a better place.
Okay, here's my question for you. If Christianity is true, do you think it would be harmful to some people and not harmful to others?
No, not in a strict sense.
Could
I would say
Christianity
that
be
it's been
true?
used for harm.
Could Christianity be true, and could practicing Christianity itself be harmful to somebody?
Practicing Christianity and doing my best to follow the teachings of Jesus and treat people well and love my neighbor and all that kind of thing.
Believing in the Christian God, could that be harmful to somebody?
For someone to believe?
Yep.
I don't think so.
It was very harmful to me. And they are now doing a lot of studies on religious trauma and how it impacts especially children's brains. And the very belief and ideas of Jesus dying on the cross, this whole sacrificial story, the story of being born with original sin, all of this stuff that is centered around most Christian beliefs can cause brain damage to people. So it is demonstrably harmful to people. I'm living proof. I'm right now working on writing a whole chapter about it in my book, and I'm reading all these interesting studies and expert opinions on how harmful it can be. It's not always harmful to people. There are some people that Christianity is not harmful to them. So what I'm getting at now is, does something being harmful or not make it true or not? Because you've basically carried the burden of this argument over to different points over and over and over again and just bounce them back and forth to, well, I'm going to believe it until I get reason not to believe it. Well, it's okay to believe this one because it's not harmful. Okay, well, what if it is harmful? Well, then I don't know. What's the next reason now?
I can't think of another reason right now.
I think it's worth you looking into all of this. I understand that religion can give somebody a sense of purpose and can help them make massive transformations in their life. I just wrote a chapter on that, the power of testimony. So I fully understand all of this. I still don't find it a good reason to believe, because we can find all of these things from other sources, from significantly less harmful sources, which if you care about harm, that's great. I would go ask yourself some more questions about all of this, because I don't feel that you've applied skepticism here. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
That's fine. I'm wondering if you have an example of something that is true and good and only achievable via Christianity.
Provable? No.
Is it testable?
And exclusive to Christianity, nothing is coming to mind.
And yet, why is it that you're comfortable believing in untestable claims about Christianity while rejecting untestable claims about other things?
Again, it comes down to I found a purpose, and I am in the church on the inside, doing my best to try and end the kinds of things that caused you trauma. I promise. I'm sorry for that. And
oh my God!
We've been horrible.
Joe, let me give you a piece of it.
Go ahead.
No, Joe, don't ever say shit like that. Because first of all, Christianity is either true or not. And your milquetoast, let me try and soften shit from the inside because I found a purpose, isn't theologically sound. It's not biblically sound. You're not responsible for what happened to Promise. You can't apologize for it or make up for it. Sitting there saying that you are empathetic to this while actually lending credence to personal opinions that are untestable because you find it valuable. It is vile for you to do that.
And Joe, I want to just point out to you the reason you can point the majority of my religious trauma, you can pin it down to this one key element. There were adults in my life that believed things they had no good reason to believe and indoctrinated me with those. That was the harm that was caused. They believed things that they had no good reason to, and then brought those into my life. That's harmful. It caused me to have to completely change everything. They were presented to me as fact. They were presented to me as though they had evidence, and they didn't. So it's not like, some crazy, wild story that a lot of people have. The harm itself was in people around me believing things they had no good reason to believe, and having me live outside of the confines of reality in order to engage with those beliefs. So do you see what I'm saying here? It can be very harmful to believe in Christianity, and you can cause others harm through that belief.
I do, and I didn't mean to be vile, and I recognize that in offering an apology, I have no ability to make it better, and I wasn't trying to dismiss that harm. And I'm also speaking from personal experience in harm. I almost lost my my daughter, who's a transgender woman, because of religious trauma. And part of what I'm doing is also trying to change the church so that that doesn't happen to another young person.
You think you're going to change the church?
What I think would mean a lot. I appreciate that you have this intent behind things to bring about some good. My request to anybody that's continuing to believe Christianity and has this idea that they want things to get better is to take a look at their own beliefs with skepticism and actually apply questions about what they believe and figure out if it's something they should continue to believe or not, if it's true or not. Because I don't think they should have anything to do with working in churches and perpetuating these beliefs if they themselves don't have testable reason to believe it.
I have questions. Do you think do you think the likelihood is that your acceptance of Christianity is doing harm to you by preventing you from finding out the right answer to some things?
I suppose that it's possible that it could. Again, I do stay open. I decided to call, but I've listened to this channel. I have atheist friends that we talk a lot with, and I try to be open-minded. That's a sincere thing, a statement I'm making.
So now you're a Christian trying to soften the church. Are your positions biblical?
I think that there are culturally contextual ways of interpreting the scripture that would
really? So when the
allow
Bible
for a more
says that if
progressive.
a man lies with another man as he lies with a woman, that's an abomination, they're deserving of death. What do you think that means?
I think that, and this is, I don't know, going back to what I wrote originally in my comment, I think the Bible is a description of what people thought their encounters with God were, and they wrote it down
Okay.
based on their
Okay.
perception as
So,
best they
so
could.
all
I
of
don't
these
believe the
people,
Bible was
stop
dictated by
talking.
God.
Stop talking. All of these people who believe the Bible was inspired by God, you're going to change their mind, and you're going to do it with your untestable, unfalsifiable personal opinion to try to change a religious structure that's been around and is changing, but still maintains a tie to this biblical thing, all because you think you know better than God. God couldn't inspire a book that was good enough for you. So you're going to decide and try to convince everybody else that Joe's take on the Bible is superior to theirs and superior to God's. Because if there is a God, clearly God has failed to communicate as well as Joe can.
That's a fair take on it. I would say that it's more discovering what the Bible's real message was, taking it as a whole.
How do you do that? How do you do that, Joe? How do you find out what the Bible's real message was?
There's a whole bunch of theologians trying to do that, and I think
no, that's
some of
not what
them
I
are
asked.
doing good work.
How do you know they're doing good work? There are theologians telling you what they think. How do you know that any of them are closer to what God thinks?
I think the overall trajectory of Scripture indicates a God that is a God of love and principally interested in human good.
Full of shit. I think you're full of shit. The overall tradition of the scripture in the Bible is a God who is petty and jealous, who puts people into the Garden of Eden, knowing what they're going to do, and then punishes them and all their descendants for it, then tries to fix the world a couple of different times, and it goes horribly wrong. Then he decides to pick just one group of people to be his chosen people, and that goes horribly wrong. He has no interaction with anybody. He can't communicate clearly. He's going to fault people. He's going to implement permanent, eternal torment for finite crimes. Where is the love? Show me any example of anything that I would recognize as love coming from God or Jesus.
It would be through people motivated by Jesus. It would be Catholic hospitals.
No,
it would
sir.
be
No, sir. No, sir.
not good,
Hospitals are the
or
creation
just
of
not God,
people. What? Where in the Bible and where from God? How do you know that God wants us to make hospitals?
because He's interested in. Jesus said, "Take care of the sick."
Okay, but that doesn't mean make hospitals.
Why can't it mean that though? Why can't that be an
It
application of
might.
that?
How do you know? How do you know that Jesus said that? And how do you know that Jesus represents God's mind? And how do you know that it's a fair interpretation of what Jesus said to think that God wants to build a hospital? What's your justification for that? You don't have any. Just like you don't have any for any of this. It's all based on how you feel. You have violated scripture by placing yourself above God, and you are leaning entirely on your own understanding. Let God be true and every man a liar. Lean not on your own understanding. The Bible says things, it allows for slavery. Why? Well,
because
don't even worry about that one because we do slavery all the time.
Okay.
Let me do a different one. Do you think it is
Sure.
morally correct to require a rapist to marry his rape victim?
No.
Then why does the Bible advocate for that?
My only answer is going to be based on what I believe the Bible is, and
that is based on what? Is that based on God, or is that based on your impression of what you think God is?
I think there's a certain level where
either or.
if you take deductive reasoning and logic, you cannot accept everything, especially in the Old Testament, as plain literal.
I think that is the
You
most
can't, it's
disgusting tap
not
dance
consistent.
around the actual question that I've heard today, and we've heard some doozies. The fact is, you have no justification for any of your thoughts or opinions about God, and yet you are leaning entirely on your own understanding in order to determine what parts of the Bible you can conveniently dismiss as not consistent with God, and which ones you can reinterpret in a way that makes them, hey, God wants us to build hospitals. You are engaged in a massive act of self-deception, and you're extending that to think that you are going to change the institution of the church to go more in line with the God. You have made a God of yourself and are trying to foist that on the church. Let me know how that goes.
Okay. Progress is being made, but I do understand how you feel about it.
No, it's not. You don't get to call it progress unless you can demonstrate that it's moving towards the correct goal.
If the correct goal is greater kindness and compassion, I think there is demonstrable progress.
You don't know the correct goal. If there's a God, isn't the correct goal that which God wants?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
To the extent that we know
If
what
you
God
don't
wants.
have any way of, and if you don't have any way of demonstrating what God wants, then you have no way of demonstrating that you're making progress towards what God wants.
Okay.
You know who can have a goal of making the world better? Humanists. You know who can have progress towards that goal? Humanists. You know who can't? Fake ass Christians.
There is a way that Christianity can motivate, and it's like
I
this. You
didn't say
don't
it couldn't,
need to
Joe.
be
I
in love
didn't
with
say
my
it
wife
couldn't,
to be
Joe.
kind to
I
her.
didn't
Go
say,
ahead.
Joe, I didn't say Christianity couldn't motivate. As a matter of fact, I've said the exact opposite, probably hundreds of times, and earlier in this show. I don't give a fuck. I care about whether it's true. You know, because you know what? It not only motivates some people to engage in acts of kindness, it encourages other people to murder, to deny people their rights, to further marginalize people. You don't get to cherry pick the
Which is
good
why
things that you think are, you don't get to interrupt me either. You don't get to cherry pick the good things that you like and pretend like they're a part of Christianity. Here's my last question for you ever, Joe. Why can't you just be good without trying to glom your goodness onto garbage?
well, I wouldn't call it garbage. It is motivation.
I would, I
I can.
did. I would and I did.
Okay,
I would and I
fine.
did. And you knew exactly what the fuck I was talking about. So skip the tap dance this time and explain why you can't just be good without God like the rest of us.
I could, but my motivation
Then
is still
do it.
God.
Okay.
But
You have
Joe,
shit
you're better.
motivation.
So Joe, here's what's sad to me though, is you are already significantly better than this God that you believe in. Where was this God
Yep.
during all kinds of horrific events throughout history, all kinds of horrific events today? I believe that if you were able to do something about the harm caused to innocent children, you would do it. If you had that power, I believe you would do whatever it took to protect them, because you say that you're against harm and that you want people, well, you're already apologizing to me out of the kindness of your heart for something you can't even apologize for, which is the
Yep.
religious trauma I dealt with. That's more than a God has ever done. So it's sad to me that you are putting in all this effort and the God that you believe in has done nothing to demonstrate its goodness. And you're here showing up trying to make up for the lack of goodness and, in fact, the harm caused by this God that you believe in.
Maybe you should go join the KKK and see if you can't make them a little less racist.
That is a characterization. Wow.
The God of the Bible is a mafia boss. Hey, nice soul you got there. Shame if something were to happen to it. Now do what I say all the time and give me 10% of your money.
I think there are ways that in the Bible, people, even in Bible times, use God to justify horrible things. And I believe that because I see the church doing that in America right now with the MAGA movement and taking away people's rights.
I don't.
And so,
Do you think you're saying anything of substance or use? Yes, I not only were we both Christians, but we're also aware of the Bible and know it better than most of the Christians that are there. I'm well aware of the harm done by the church. I pointed it out many, many times. You know what I'm not aware of? The good. I'm not aware of anything good and true that is contingent on believing Christianity or that Christianity is true. And I keep asking, and I used to offer a steak dinner to anybody who could offer something, and they can't. And yet people like you who want to pretend like you care about what's true are taking your otherwise good person ideas on how to make the world better and offering them up as a reformation of the church so that we can rehabilitate a garbage mafioso institution. The rest of us are sitting here working to make the world a better place without buying into bullshit and without propping it up. Because at the end of the day, you and the KKK point to the same holy book, and all you can do is say, well, my understanding of it's a little bit different. You know what? My understanding of it is that it is fucking garbage, it's unnecessary, and that nothing good is contingent upon it. And I don't have to align myself with the KKK or Project 2025 or the Catholic Church or any church. That's what having convictions about what is right actually means. You feel that it's important to say it. For you, it's more important that you say you care about truth than to actually act like you care about truth.
I would say that while not contingent on God, motivated by God, I am trying to do good, and I would hope that we can be friends in that. That's about the best I can offer.
How much time have you spent reading the Bible?
Quite a bit.
So what are you going to do if you find yourself standing before God and he says, depart from me, I never knew you?
Hope that I'm right about annihilation and not eternal conscious torment.
Oh, okay. So you're an annihilationist. Well, that's convenient. So you automatically remove consequences. That's yeah. Yeah, you have constructed yourself a nice little ivory tower and hung a banner on it that says Christian. It's unrecognizable as Christianity. You're using Christianity as a convenience for you so that you don't have to defend your ideas. You can just say, I think they're consistent with what God wants. Well, whoop-a-doo. I wish you could be better, Joe. I'm happy you're good. I like you. I wish you could be better.
I'm trying.
All right. Well, since we're not going to get any more evidence for anything out of Joe, I guess we'll move on. And if you come up with something testable, falsifiable, or, come to some realization that we might be able to make use of, feel free to call us back.
Yep. Have a good one.
Later. Sorry, you were supposed to be
Hi, Joe.
staring and I jumped in to end it.
No. That's great. I've been ending all the other ones, so you want to pick our next caller? Is that a color changing cup?
Yes. They are.
I haven't had one of those since I was a kid.
Well, come over, hang out. I got a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
Trap is calling from Florida. Pronounce him, says,
Yeah.
I have my own personal God I believe in. Is your God something that would matter to me in promise? Like, does it matter whether we believe in him or them or it?
It does not.
Okay. So does it matter to anybody?
First of all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just want to say hello to everybody on the panel.
Okay. So if it doesn't make any difference whether or not God promise and I believe in your God, I don't know what we're going to talk about.
I just wanted to come say what I believe in, and I've been watching y'all for a
Yeah,
little
but
while. You know,
if you've been
That's
go
not
watching
ahead.
us for
Go
a
ahead,
little
how
man.
the
while,
show works.
then if you've been
I
watching us for a
know.
little while, you should realize we don't want people just to call in and say, I believe this, but I can't demonstrate it to anybody, and it doesn't matter if you believe it. That's the exact stuff I don't want people to call in. So if your God doesn't matter to anybody, and it doesn't matter whether we believe it, and you're not going to try to defend it, I think we're just going to move on.
My God doesn't matter to you because my God doesn't work for you. My God only works for me, and it's more of an ancestral worship. So
Yeah. So trap. This is literally the stuff that I
I'm
don't
just
need anybody to call in on because I don't care. It doesn't impact us in the slightest.
have a good one.
Cool. Later. Yeah. If you've got a personal God that just works for you and has no impact on the rest of us, I mean, I suppose we could have a conversation about why you believe it, but if you don't think anybody else should believe it, honestly, I'd rather move on to the gods that people think we should believe. Like, for
Yeah,
example,
those are fun. Those are conversations to have with your friends, over a drink or something, but not what we're looking for here on the show.
Cody's calling from Georgia.
Oh,
Cody's a theist who says that God is foundational to reality. Hey, Cody, how are you?
Pretty good, man. How you doing today?
Not bad, all things considered. So, what do you mean God is foundational to reality?
So the way I see God is essentially the mechanism of creation, and by my definition, that's essentially causality.
So, God is the mechanism of causality.
So God, and the terms are a little different. But God is basically the mechanism behind causality. It's basically a group term. Causality being one of
Okay.
the
How do
components
you
of it.
know there's a mechanism behind causality?
Behind what? Behind causality?
You said that God is the mechanism behind causality, and I'm saying, how do you know there's a mechanism behind causality?
So it's basically a system of function. A system of function and action and reaction. And then it aspires to greater portions through information exchange.
So
Meetings
what I'm
every day.
asking you is, I understand what causality is, and we understand different models of causality. I don't think we've solved exactly all potential models of causality, but you said that God is the mechanism behind causality, and I'd like to know, why do you think how can you demonstrate there is a mechanism behind causality?
It's an essential function. The way definitions work and applying God to this is very rudimentary and basic and easy to apply. And not to mention the
Yes.
way it upscales.
That's a bunch of words. That's a bunch of words, but none of those words even get anywhere near explaining to me why you're convinced that there is a mechanism behind causality.
I said it's an inherent function.
I'm sorry. Why? I understand causality. I don't see any reason to believe there's a
Okay.
mechanism behind causality. You do.
It's interactions
And you
of
are
space
calling,
and time
and
and
you
energy.
are calling, you believe that there's a mechanism behind it, and you're calling it God. Is your God a thinking agent,
It's
or
a
is it
lot.
just I'm sorry, I don't know why you keep talking before I get to the question. So, is your God a thinking agent?
It's a discerning agent, the discerning agent of reality that manifests everything: particles, people, plant,
I'm
stars,
sorry. I
everything you
asked a
know of.
yes or no question. I asked a yes or no question, and
And
you
I made an
changed
elaborate
the wording
explanation.
in response, and then you decided to talk over me. So, I'm trying to figure out, is your God a thinking agent? Yes or no?
First, define thinking.
It's
Processing
what you're
information.
not actually
Yeah.
doing right now. I'm done.
Are you sure? You know, run,
Yep.
bitch.
I'm done. What was that?
It's usual fucking bitch. Hey, guess what? I have a new show coming out. And
You should have got your transphobic and homophobic and racist comments in quicker. But you decided to advertise your show. And you know what? I don't think I need to know about your show.
He's banned.
Because when I ask, all I was trying to do is causality is this concept of like cause and effect. Oh, I think Promise may be muted. Are you muted? I saw Promise. I can't hear you. Anyway, I'll let you and Morgan and Promise sort it out. Here's the thing. Causality is how we describe something following something and being linked in a what we call causal sense. I know I'm defining causality using the word causal, but it's where some action, event, etc., manifests in reality with a particular substance. When I slap my hand on the table, it makes a sound that resonates. I've done it a couple times today. The issue here is if you think that there's a thinking being that is responsible for making causality work the way it is, I don't see any reason to think that there is anything making causality work the way it does, let alone I don't see any reason why that has to be a thinking agent. And so this is why when I ask, hey, is it a thinking agent? If you're going to say, well, what do you mean by thinking? Yeah, sorry, the grown-ups are playing. Call back when you get there. But the problem here is every time we get something like this, what it is it's a God of the gaps. There's something we don't understand fully. And so they will stick their God in because something that can do anything can serve as a gap filler for other things. Don't know why causality works the way it does? God. Don't know why there's something rather than nothing? God. Don't know why you keep farting after you eat beans? God. It doesn't matter. Asserting this gap filler doesn't in any way demonstrate that you have solved a problem. And so I was really hoping that Cody, instead of tossing out, I don't know, words that didn't even form a cogent thought. It's like I knocked him off of his script and he was busy typing something into ChatGPT to try to get an answer to why is there a mechanism behind causality. I can argue with ChatGPT without having you call in. I really can. Promise, are you back? No, I can't hear you. We can't hear you. I'm gonna start this call. We're coming up on maybe the end of the show. I'd like to keep the lines open to see if maybe we can get one more since we dropped Cody. But DT is calling from England, and while we try and get Promise's audio back, DT, you're a theist who says existence of God is the only logical position. Well, we know that's not true. But what's your case for that? How you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Right. So I'm a Muslim, so I believe in God, and I believe it's logical to believe in the existence of God because there are a few logical reasonings like the fine-tuning argument or the
So I think,
intelligent.
DT. Just for clarity,
Yeah.
instead of saying there's a logical reason, can we say there's a rational reason? There's rational warrant? Because logical, we talked about earlier, the notion that logical possibility is absolutely useless. And you not only can you have reasoned positions that are ultimately wrong, but you can definitely have logical positions that are ultimately wrong because logic is just about, do you accept the premises and is it in a valid structure? So you think, if I'm understanding, please, if I'm misunderstanding, correct me. You're saying there are rational reasons that are based on evidence to believe there's a God.
I mean, there is evidence. I'll show you my evidence of why I believe in a specific God, but I'm just telling you, logically, it only makes sense that God exists. Now, what
Are
definition
you
of God?
saying, are you saying, okay, since you can't answer the question that I asked, are you saying
Yeah.
that it is logically impossible for there to not be a God?
Yes.
How do you demonstrate that?
Right. So I think it's common knowledge that something can come out of nothing. Sorry, nothing.
No DT, no DT, no DT.
No?
It's not, and you don't get to cite common knowledge
Why not?
because the majority of people believe in a God, and the majority of people couldn't describe rationality and epistemology in any useful way at all. What is common knowledge is completely unimpressive and may not be rational or true. If you want to say that it is logically necessary that no God exists, or that God, it is logically necessary for God to exist, you don't get to cite popular opinions because that's not logical necessity. So if you're going to present a case that it is that God is a logical necessity, you need to present an argument that has premises that lead to a conclusion. Therefore, God is logically necessary.
Right. Firstly, maybe you're more eloquent than me. I'm not. So maybe if you're understanding me, apologies for that. Secondly, again, this something can come out of nothing. This is an agreed fact. That is why I was saying it's common. I didn't say
it's
God.
so first of all, DT, that's not necessarily true. And there's been no demonstration that any model has something coming out of nothing, except for the God model suggests, in many versions of the God model, not all of them, suggest creation ex nihilo, that God created out of nothing. And so that is something from nothing.
Explain that?
Hang on. You'll get the explanation I'm pretty sure you're getting ready to ask for. But in cosmology, we don't have a way to investigate prior to the Planck time. At no point in physics is there an assertion that once there was nothing and now there is something. The only thing we can say with physics is that something, which may or may not have come into existence or may or may not have always existed, we don't know, we don't have any way to investigate it, that something changed and expanded. That's all we can say.
Okay. And
so something from nothing is irrelevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
Because I'm not asserting that something ever came from nothing. You may not be, but some people who are advocating for God are claiming that something came from nothing. But my position is not that something came from nothing. It is irrelevant to point out that you don't think something can come from nothing. I have never claimed it did, and science isn't claiming it did.
So do you not think we should use some kind of rationale, some kind of logic to come to conclusions? I'll give you an example.
Yeah, no, I don't need an example. I'm literally giving you the examples of using rationality and pointing out fallacies and flaws and premises that aren't true. And then you're asking me, do I not think that we should use rationality? I'm literally doing it. I am taking your argument and showing which premises are untrue and which premises are irrelevant. That's rational argument.
Which is not, again, sorry. Probably your English is way more sophisticated than I can comprehend. So if you can maybe break down it a bit in simpler words, probably will help me out.
Do you know how the universe came to expand? Okay, here, let me back up. Do you agree that the universe expanded in something similar to what is described by Big Bang cosmology?
Yes, I do agree with that.
Cool. Do you know what state the universe was in just before that expansion?
No.
Neither do I. And all I can say is our ability to investigate stops at the Planck time. I can't go back further than that. But at no point in the scientific model that I accept is there nothing. And so saying something can't come from nothing is not in any way a rebuttal to my position or any position that doesn't include a God.
Right. I agree with that. So something would have caused that expansion, isn't it? Not necessarily God, but something would have caused it. Can we agree on that?
No. And I get that that's confusing, but I will try to do this really quickly. I would agree that we intuit that there was a cause, but causality is necessarily temporal. A precedes B, A contributes to B, B is the effect of A. That means causality only happens within time. Big Bang cosmology has time as we experience it, beginning at the instant of expansion. And so prior to that doesn't even make sense. There was no time before that. And so there was no time for there to be causality. So what we know is an expansion occurred, whether or not it was an external cause, an internal cause, or completely uncaused, because A-type time and B-type time are still disputed, but there's also this notion of simultaneous causality. And we don't know, we don't have any way to investigate that moment, which is why you don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. And so as uncomfortable as it is, we have to say, I don't know. And while intuitively we would presume there's a cause because that's how it works within time, we cannot take what happens within space-time and apply it to outside of space-time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. So you're saying that causality is always dependent on something else, but can there be an infinite regress of dependent beings? Is that logical?
Oh, so again, we're shifting to an argument from contingency, and you're going to try to do the hang on. Would you stop? Would you stop? I'm fucking explaining this to the audience, and I'm trying to make sure that I get verification from you.
Polite, and I'm trying to be nice, and you're being polite.
I'm trying to be nice too, and if you had a fucking clue, you'd have figured that out and shut your mouth when I told you to. Are we going to do this, or are you going to listen? That was a question. Okay. I'm trying to explain to the audience what we're talking about for the many people out there who may not know. And when I'm done, I'm going to give you the option to say, no, that's not quite what I was talking about. But instead, you decided to interrupt in order to interject something else. So I've already forgotten where we were. Congratulations. You managed to sneak one past everybody by talking about how nice you're trying to be. What's your next point?
So you were clarifying something.
I don't remember what I was clarifying because you fucking interrupted me.
You said causality is always dependent on something else. That's why I said, can there always be? That's why I said
you brought up a version of the argument. You brought up a version of the argument from contingency. You're talking about something always being contingent on others. This is the same problem as the causality problem, in that contingency is also, in the sense of causality, temporal. But if the universe, if the substance of the universe always existed in some spot, in some fashion, and is not contingent on anything, the only thing that might be contingent is whatever caused the expansion, if there was a cause. Otherwise, contingency breaks down there as well.
There is one contingency.
What?
There has to be one contingent being.
What's God contingent on?
Nothing. That's the definition of
okay.
God.
So you're perfectly fine accepting that there's something that's non-contingent. You just prefer to accept something that you can't prove or investigate, something that's outside of space-time, as the non-contingent thing. And I'm saying I don't know how to say that the universe is actually not non-contingent.
So you can't prove the universe is not contingent. I'm saying there is, by definition, there's something that is
you can't prove the universe. You can't prove the universe is contingent. If you're going to tell me what I can't prove about it not being contingent, and you can prove that it is contingent, then you've come up with a useless attempt at a rebuttal that's not a rebuttal. I'm saying I cannot conclude that the universe is contingent because I have no way to verify that. I definitely can't conclude that there's a God that exists that I can't test and verify that is the actual non-contingent thing. And it is absolutely what you're trying to do, is to say there must be something that is not contingent, and I don't like it being the universe. I'm not convinced the universe could possibly be non-contingent, so I'm going to invent a being that is non-contingent. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not rational.
So something that has a beginning and an end, can that be a contingent? Can that be non-contingent?
Well, you haven't demonstrated that the universe had a beginning.
You some time ago said the universe had a beginning to someone else, and scientists have concluded that
the universe. No, I'm sorry. I said and have consistently said that we have no idea because we can't investigate prior to the Planck time, and you fucking agreed with that. We established that as the limit of our ability to investigate. You are the one who's going beyond our limit of our ability to investigate and asserting things about the universe that you have not demonstrated, and I don't know how you could demonstrate. If you could demonstrate them, I would accept them, but you haven't, and neither is anybody else.
So what I'm saying is,
I'm finally back.
Yay. Sorry, JT, we had a tech problem, or DT, we had a tech problem. We fixed it. What were you saying?
What I'm saying is, because the universe has a design, there has to be a designer, and the designer has to be independent, non-contingent on everything else.
DT. Yeah. No. You've gone from causality to contingency, and now you've gone to design. You have skipped past acknowledging any problem with anything you've said before, and you've just bounced from one argument to another to another. The universe may have the appearance of design in some case, but do you know how we tell the difference between something, how we tell if something is designed?
How is that?
We have evidence for the design. We determine design not because of complexity or anything like that, but because here we have examples of X occurring naturally, and we have examples of Y being the result of design. We have one universe. All of the evidence points to it happening naturally. All of the laws of physics within that universe are natural, and they dictate how things occur naturally in there. There is no room left to posit a design. And how would you demonstrate the universe is designed? What's it designed for?
It's designed for existence for everything. Everything has a unique pattern. Everything has a unique design.
Okay. How do you know that it's designed for the existence of everything and not merely undesigned and everything exists here because it can?
Because when we see the design, visual.
No. So you see an appearance of design. My question is, how do you tell if it's actually designed? You're saying the universe is designed for everything, and yet the appearance of the universe is both consistent with a universe that was designed for everything that's in it, and it's also consistent with a universe that was undesigned but can contain all of the things that are in it. How do you tell the difference between those two scenarios?
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Okay. Here's the universe. The facts about the universe are exactly what we would expect from a universe that was designed to be this way. And it's also exactly what we would expect if the universe was undesigned and can be this way. Since those two scenarios are logically possible, how do you tell which of them is correct?
You're putting a hypothetical question to me, right? I haven't seen the other scenario. What I'm saying is, if I'm seeing the universe right now, the other is a hypothetical situation. We don't know if we would have existed any other way.
No, there is no hypothetical here. The universe contains everything that it does in both of those scenarios. What we're getting to is, why does it contain that? And the facts of the universe are that it contains everything that you would expect if it was designed to contain those things. And it also contains what you would expect if it wasn't designed but was capable of containing those things. And so what we're talking about is not the hypothetical of what's in the universe. We're talking about two probable explanations for that. One is that it was designed to be this way, and the other one is that it was not designed but can be this way. How do you tell the difference between those two?
You are saying you cannot see design in the universe. You cannot see a pattern.
Okay, DT. I did not say that you cannot see design in the universe. I acknowledge that you can see the appearance of design, and sometimes people infer design. Please stop misstating what I've said and just answer the fucking question. Here's a universe. Okay, let's make it simple. Here's a box. This box contains everything that's in this box. It might contain everything in this box because it was designed to contain everything that's in this box. And it might contain what's in this box because it wasn't designed for those things, but can have those things. Which one is the correct answer? Was this box designed to contain the things that are in it, or was it not designed for that and yet contains those things because it can?
It can be either one.
No, only one of those two is going to be true. It can't. So the fact that you don't know which one is true, it was definitely either designed for that or not designed for that. Those are the only two options, and they are mutually exclusive. They cannot both be true. So which one is true?
It has to be the first one because it cannot be any other way.
Okay. I appreciate your consistency, even if you're consistently dishonest about evaluating this.
How am I dishonest?
But the fact you are dishonest because you're asserting that this fucking box had to be intentionally designed to specifically contain the things that are within it. I can tell you it was not specifically designed for the things that were contained in it. And you're saying it necessarily must be the case. That's because you are trying to remain consistent with your same flawed reasoning that led to your conclusion that the universe is designed. On that note,
Okay,
we have
can I
run
ask you
completely
something?
out of time.
Okay,
No, you
can I-
can't ask me a thing. You can't ask me a thing. We have run
So
completely
you
out of
want to
time.
conclude on your
I
own
have
accord then?
no. I when I say you can't ask me anything, shut your fucking mouth. We have run completely out of time, and I want to spend no more time with people who, when walked up to the edge of the obvious answer, will see and expose the fallacy in their thinking that they're using in another area. And instead of even having any hope of seeing the error of their ways, would prefer to compound that error by extending their inferred design that they can't demonstrate about the universe and asserting that it is necessarily the case for a fucking wooden box that the creator of had no clue what I would fucking put into it. Your position is ridiculous. There are people who are saying you were snickering, and so they doubt your authenticity. I don't necessarily know if I have any reason to doubt your authenticity, but we're done. Promise. I'm so glad you got your voice back, but
Sorry. I was scrambling over here. I think my mic overheated because I didn't do anything to bring it back, so just kept messing with it.
well, I tried to maintain my zen without you. It's hard. I need you
I wasn't
here.
maintaining my zen over here, frantically trying to deal with tech issues, which is my worst nightmare, other than somebody trying to act like they're not about to make the Kalam argument, which is what I feel like was happening there, but we never really got to hear much information. So,
Well, maybe DT and some of the others who didn't fare as well with you and I, maybe they would like to call in this evening to the Sunday Show After Dark, which airs right here on the same channel beginning at 7 Central. So it's in 2 hours and 15 minutes roughly. You can be right back here to watch more of this. What you do in between there, I mean, there's other things to watch, but you should probably give your brain a rest. Maybe go for a walk around the neighborhood. You don't have anything else you need to do until it's time for more Sunday shows.
Sounds like
All
a good time. I'd love for some of them to call back with better arguments. That would be great.
It's wild to me. I live in a world where truth doesn't seem to matter, where sound arguments don't seem to matter, where people who couldn't define epistemology, fallacy, or give an example of one think they understand critical thinking and reasoning better than those of us who've spent our lives teaching it to others. And now you get presentations of argument. DT's argument is perfectly acceptable, common apologetics arguments where, oh, there needs to be a first cause. Does there? Oh, something can't come from nothing. Is anybody saying it was? Oh, everything's contingent except God. Weird. And oh, there's evidence for design. No, there are facts that are consistent with your inference of design, but they don't confirm design. And this, and even when I've got this beautiful Japanese puzzle box. You can slide different pieces around and get into whatever's secretly in there.
That's so cool.
I've got several of them. I used to be absolutely fascinated with them. And in order to remain consistent, the caller decides that he asserts that box necessarily had to be designed specifically to contain what's in there. Because to say anything else would expose the flaw to himself in his reasoning. He's going to assert the universe necessarily was designed for all of the things it contains. Now, that means it was also designed for hurricanes and cancer and psychopathic killers and black holes and bugs that eat through the eyes of children and irrational claims and, anything and everything. But design's already cherry picking. Why not cherry pick it right on my custom box over here? The world isn't the way it used to be, isn't the way it should be. And it's like genuinely disturbing. Like, not to turn today's show into politics, I want to do this and just wrap it up. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, had said back in February that the file related to the Epstein client list was on her desk. She did not literally say the Epstein client list is on my desk, but what she said was when asked if there was a client list and would we be seeing it, she said it's on my desk now. She could have been referring to the file or the list, doesn't matter. Nobody in their right mind thinks that there's a piece of paper on Jeffrey Epstein letterhead that says my clients are so and so and so and so and so and
Right.
so. This is the client list is what is the data that show who was traveling with him, who was doing what, who potentially paid for sex, who engaged in this. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail if there's no client list?
If there's,
and
what's the information that they have to back all of that?
Meanwhile, Elon, I have no idea how he knows what the client list is. There's no reason to think he's ever seen it or knows anything about it, but he asserts that Trump's on it, which is completely unsurprising because they were best friends for years. So of course he's on the list of traveling and potentially being a client and all that stuff. Meanwhile, Elon's also saying that Steve Bannon is on the list. And now my brain, and by the way, Trump just said that the list, Pam Bondi's doing great. He wants MAGA to stop focusing on Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody should care about that because this is all an invented fiction of the Democrats. This is Obama and Clinton making up a Jeffrey Epstein list. I mean, we are now in a completely post-truth world. It is incredibly frustrating. And when we have callers that demonstrate that not only do they not know how to tell the difference between what's real and what's not real, what's rational and what's not rational, but they also don't care while claiming that they do. They claim they care about truth while demonstrating they don't. They claim that they understand reason and critical thinking better than we do while demonstrating that they don't. We live in the Dunning-Kruger universe, but not just a Dunning-Kruger universe. We live in a Dunning-Kruger universe that has been taken over by evil, psychopathic fascists who are more concerned with what pronoun somebody uses than what food they have to eat, with what bathroom they're using than whether or not they have the health care to make sure they can even piss and shit properly. We have lost so much. I am not ready to completely give up, but we have a lot of work to do. And what may need to be addressed are the sorts of gods that lead to things like Project 2025, that lead to Sharia law, that lead to marginalizing these groups. What I don't have any patience for anymore is, well, I don't really believe in a God like that, but what if there's this force that's behind causality and maybe it's a creator and it just wants us to be nice to each other, and I should go maybe try to convince these people in this fundamentalist church that that's what I think God really wants. It is the most time-wasty shit. The world is on fire and burning. Go find someone you love, give them a hug, tell them that you love them. Tell them that you are as distraught at the state of the world as they are, and that you want to help face it together, and that you've got their back, whether they are currently, like me sometimes, avoiding the news or knee deep, neck deep, entrenched in observing the news. Because the only way we're going to get through this is together. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Sunday show today. Huge thank you to Promise. I'm so sorry your audio went out there at the end, but I know you are desperate to get some rest. So go sleep, rest, be awesome.